Hi guys. Tonight, we stand together in the open cold, where the wind already has teeth and the sky feels much closer than it should. You are not looking at snow through glass or listening to it from a warm room. You are in it. Snow needles your face, slips down your collar, and melts slowly against skin that will not truly warm again until spring, somewhere nearby. A church bell is muffled by the storm, its sound swallowed before it can travel far. Medieval England does not ease you into winter. It throws you into it, unheated, unprotected, and mostly unprepared by modern standards. You probably won't survive this, at least not comfortably. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Is it late, early, somewhere in between now? Dim the lights. And stay with the story as your boots crunch across frozen ground that has not softened for weeks. The blizzard does not arrive with drama. It creeps. The air thickens first. Snow falls straight down. Then sideways. Then everywhere at once. Wind presses against you like a living thing, probing for gaps in your clothing. You pull your cloak tighter, though you already know it won't be enough. Nothing here is ever enough. Heat is not something you control. It is something you borrow briefly, then lose. You turn toward home, which is less a refuge than a pause between exposures. Your house is low and dark, crouched against the weather as if ashamed to stand upright. Timber beams creak under the strain of cold. The walls are a rough patchwork of wood, mud, and straw, meant to keep rain out more than heat in. This is a mainstream reality of medieval English housing. Most ordinary people lived in structures designed for affordability and speed of construction, not insulation. Comfort was secondary to survival, and even survival was negotiated daily. As you push inside, the door scrapes against frozen earth. Cold follows you in. It always does. The fire is still alive. Barely. A small, stubborn glow in the hearth. You feed it a precious piece of wood and feel the room change by degrees so small they're almost imaginary. Smoke curls upward, thick and sour, stinging your eyes. You don't complain. Smoke means warmth, and warmth means another night alive. People today often imagine fireplaces as cozy. In reality, medieval hearths were inefficient, smoky, and temperamental. But they were everything. The blizzard roars outside now, loud enough to feel through the walls. Wind forces itself through every crack. You can hear it hiss where wattle meets beam. A thin, constant sound like breathing. You sit close to the fire, knees drawn in, cloak wrapped around your legs. The floor beneath you is packed dirt, cold as stone. Straw helps. A little. Not much. You shift your weight, trying to find a position that hurts less. There's a smell to winter survival that never leaves. Wet wool, smoke, old food, human bodies kept too close for too long. You breathe it in without thinking. This is your world. Outside, snow piles against the house, sealing gaps and blocking paths. Inside, time slows. Darkness comes early and stays late. You have hours to endure before sleep. And sleep itself is not guaranteed comfort. It is simply unconsciousness with a chance of waking. You share this space with others. Family. Perhaps. Maybe neighbors, if things have grown desperate. Bodies mean heat. Heat means life. Privacy dissolves quickly in winter. Medieval people understood this instinctively. Shared sleeping was common. Not from affection but necessity. Historians still debate whether this closeness reduced illness or made outbreaks worse during severe winters. But when the alternative was freezing alone, theory didn't matter much. You think briefly about how strange it would feel to someone from the future. The way survival depends on habits rather than tools. There is no switch to flip, no dial to turn. Warmth is manual labor and patience. You rub your hands together until the skin burns slightly. then stops feeling much at all. That numbness is dangerous. You flex your fingers, forcing blood back into them, welcoming the ache as proof you're still here. Food waits nearby, carefully rationed. Bread, hardened by age. A small piece of salted meat saved for the worst days. Weak ale that won't freeze and offers a little warmth as it goes down. This is another well-established reality. Ale was safer than water in winter and provided calories that mattered when bodies burned fuel just to stay alive. You sip slowly. Not for pleasure, but effect. The wind howls louder, and for a moment, fear presses into you harder than cold. Blizzards in medieval England could isolate villages for days or weeks. Roads disappeared. Travel became deadly guesswork. There are records of people losing their way just steps from home. Swallowed by white. One odd but persistent winter belief held that snowstorms could confuse the dead as well as the living, trapping restless spirits between worlds. It sounds quaint now, but in darkness like this, with sound distorted and direction erased, it's easy to understand how superstition grew legs. You listen. The fire pops softly. Someone coughs behind you. A dry sound made worse by smoke. You shift again, sharing what warmth you can. This is not heroism. It's endurance. Medieval survival rarely involved dramatic moments. It was a long series of small decisions made correctly enough times to reach morning. Your thoughts wander, slow and heavy. You wonder how long the storm will last. You wonder if the roof will hold. You wonder, briefly, if spring is a promise or just a story people tell themselves to keep going. Outside, snow keeps falling. Indifferent to your questions. For now, you stay where you are. You watch the fire. You listen to the wind. You breathe smoke and warmth and fear together, letting them blur into something almost peaceful. Not because the danger is gone, but because you've learned that panic wastes energy. And energy is life. The house settles around you as the storm deepens, making small sounds that you have learned to read like moods. A beam ticks as it contracts in the cold. Thatch rustles overhead as wind fingers its way across the roof. Nothing here is solid in the way modern buildings are solid. Everything flexes. Everything breathes. Medieval homes in England were not sealed boxes meant to keep nature out. They were porous shelters, designed to survive weather rather than defeat it. You take a slow look around, because there is nowhere else for your eyes to go. The walls are close. They lean inward slightly, not from poor craftsmanship, but from age and intention. Timber frames filled with wattle and daub were quick to raise and used materials everyone could find. Strips of woven wood packed with mud, straw, dung, and whatever else was available formed the skin of the house. When dry, it hardened enough to block rain and wind most days. In winter, though, cold slid through it easily, like water through cloth. This was a mainstream feature of medieval rural housing. People built to survive average weather. Not extremes. Blizzards were endured, not engineered against. When the wind is mild, the gaps allow smoke to escape and air to circulate. When the wind turns cruel, those same gaps become enemies. You feel them now. Cold presses against your ankles, your neck, the small of your back. You shift your cloak again, though it barely helps. The roof above you is thick with thatch, layered straw or reeds tied tightly to keep out rain. Thatch insulates better than bare wood, but it is not magic. Snow piles on top, heavy and quiet. You wonder how much weight it can take. Roof collapse was not rare in harsh winters. Some families slept with one ear half open, listening for changes in sound that might warn them to move before it was too late. Historians still argue whether most collapses happened suddenly or showed signs first. But everyone agreed on one thing. If the roof went at night, survival depended on luck. There are no windows in the way you understand them. Perhaps a small shuttered opening. Maybe oiled cloth stretched across a frame if you are lucky. Glass exists, but not here. Light is a visitor, not a resident. During the day, you live in shadow. At night, you live by firelight and memory. The storm outside makes darkness feel heavier, pressing inward until the walls seem to shrink. The floor beneath you is earth, packed hard by years of feet. In some homes, rushes are scattered across it, mixed with herbs to soften the smell. In winter, fresh rushes are rare. What's there stays there. Dirt floors pull heat from your body relentlessly. You learn to stand or sit on anything that lifts you even slightly. A bench, a bundle of straw, another person's foot. Anything helps. The house was never meant to be warm in the modern sense. It was meant to slow death. That distinction matters. When you understand it, the choices people made begin to make sense. Why smoke filled the room? Why animals lived close? Why everyone slept together? These were not signs of ignorance. They were adaptations shaped by generations who knew exactly how unforgiving winter could be. You glance toward the doorway. Thick wood warped by damp and age. There are gaps there too. Places where daylight shows in summer. Tonight, those slivers glow faintly white with snow. Some households stuffed cloth or straw into them during storms. A crude attempt at sealing the world out. It helped a little. But sealing a medieval house too tightly brought its own danger. Smoke had to go somewhere. Air had to move. Balance mattered. There is a strange, almost forgotten trick some families used during deep cold. They banked snow deliberately against the outer walls, packing it tight. Snow, for all its hostility, can insulate. It blocks wind and stabilizes temperature. It feels counterintuitive. But snow pressed against wattle and daub could make the interior slightly less brutal. Not everyone trusted this method. Some feared damp. Others feared spirits trapped in the snow. Still, when you're desperate, superstition bends. You sit and feel the house respond to the storm. It sways just enough to remind you it is alive in its own way. A modern mind might call it flimsy. You call it familiar. Every sound has meaning. Every draft has a source you can point to in the dark. You know where the worst cold comes from. You know where to avoid sleeping. Knowledge like this is inherited quietly, passed from body to body rather than written down. The smell inside thickens as the night goes on. Smoke mixes with damp wood and old straw. Your eyes sting again. A low irritation you barely notice anymore. Chronic smoke exposure was part of daily life. Some modern researchers believe it contributed to respiratory illness and shortened lives. Others argue that constant exposure built a tolerance of sorts. Historians still debate how much indoor smoke shaped medieval health. But in moments like this, the choice is simple: smoke or freeze. You lean back against the wall and feel its cold through your clothing. The daub is dry here, cracked slightly from age. You trace one crack with a finger, absent-mindedly. In summer, spiders nest there. In winter, it's just another path for cold. You think about how often this house has seen storms like this. Decades, maybe longer. Each winter leaves its mark, but the house remains, patched and repatched, like the people inside it. Outside, the wind surges again, louder now, as if testing the structure. You hold your breath without meaning to. The house holds. It always has. That trust, built slowly over years, is part of what keeps fear manageable. If the walls have survived before, they might survive again. Might. There are no guarantees. You shift closer to the hearth, careful not to crowd the fire too much. Sparks leap occasionally, tiny and dangerous. Hearth fires were open, unguarded. Burns were common. So were accidents where clothing caught flame. Another calculation, another risk weighed against cold. You extend your hands, turning them slowly, letting heat soak in unevenly. As the storm rages on, the house becomes the entire universe. There is no outside worth imagining, no road to take, no help coming, just walls, fire, bodies, and time. This is what homes were for in medieval England. Not comfort, not beauty. Survival measured in nights endured. You breathe out slowly, sinking your breath to the creaks and sighs of timber around you. The house answers back, settling into its long vigil against the cold. The fire becomes your quiet obsession as the night drags on. Not because it is beautiful, but because it is fragile. You watch it the way sailors once watched the horizon, knowing that everything depends on its mood. A medieval hearth is not a steady machine. It flares, sulks, spits, and fades according to fuel, airflow, and luck. You feed it carefully, piece by precious piece, aware that every log burned now is one you won't have later. People of the time understood something very clearly. Fire was not heat on demand. It was a negotiation. Most households in medieval England relied on a single open hearth set directly on the floor, its smoke rising freely into the room before slipping out through the roof. Chimneys existed in stone buildings and wealthier homes. But for most people, the hearth shared space with daily life. Cooking, heating, drying clothes, lighting the room, and warding off damp all depended on the same flickering source. You shift closer again, careful not to crowd it too much, too close, and sparks can jump. Wool smoulders easily. Linen catches faster than you'd like. Burns were common enough that people barely commented on them unless they were severe. A scorched sleeve or blistered hand was simply part of winter. You extend your palms, turning them slowly, letting heat seep into joints stiff with cold. The relief is immediate and shallow, like a drink taken when you're already thirsty again. Fuel is the real anxiety. Wood does not appear magically when snow falls. It must be cut, split, dried, and stored months in advance. In harsh winters, even careful families ran low. When that happened, fires were allowed to shrink, not extinguished entirely, but starved. A small, stubborn glow was easier to revive than starting fresh in freezing air. You learn to read embers, to judge whether a coal will last the night or die before dawn. There is a faint smell now, sharper than smoke alone. Resin from green wood. You wrinkle your nose. Burning wood that hasn't fully dried produces more smoke and less heat. But sometimes there is no choice. Surviving accounts quietly confirm that winter fires were often smoky, inefficient, and irritating. Comfort was sacrificed to continuity. As long as the fire lived, hope did too. The room fills unevenly with warmth. Your face burns while your back remains cold. Your feet ache with chill no matter how close you sit. This imbalance is something you accept early in life. Heat pools where it wants to, not where you need it. You reposition, trade places with someone else. Negotiate silently with bodies sharing the space. No one stays warm for long. You rotate like meat on a spit, chasing fleeting comfort. There's a small ritual you remember, passed down without ceremony. Before sleeping, someone carefully spreads ash over the embers, dulling their glow but protecting their heart. Too much ash and the fire suffocates. Too little and it flares dangerously. The right amount is learned by feel. Fingers pinch ash. Eyes judge color. This quiet knowledge keeps houses alive. It's never written down. It doesn't need to be. One overlooked detail from winter life is how much attention people gave to sound. You listen to the fire's breathing, the soft crackle that tells you it's healthy, the dull silence that warns it's fading. Fire speaks if you know its language. Tonight, it sounds tired but steady. That steadiness calms you more than warmth itself. Smoke thickens again as the wind outside shifts. Airflow changes. The house inhales and exhales through cracks and gaps. And smoke responds instantly. Your eyes sting. Tears gather uninvited. You blink them away slowly. Everyone does. Chronic smoke irritation is simply part of being indoors. Some modern interpretations suggest that constant exposure damaged lungs over time. Others point out that people adapted remarkably well. The truth likely sits somewhere between But none of that matters now. Smoke means fire, and fire means life. You cough once, softly, trying not to draw attention. Coughing reminds everyone of illness, and illness in winter is frightening. Cold weakens bodies. Damp air settles into chests. Minor sickness can become fatal quickly. You take another slow breath, shallower this time, letting smoke roll past rather than deep inside. The hearth also draws the house together in a way nothing else does. Everyone orbits it instinctively. Tools lean nearby. Food warms at its edge. Wet clothing steams faintly when hung too close. Even animals are drawn in. Noses twitching. Bodies pressed low to the ground where warmth gathers. Sharing fire means sharing risk. But it also means shared survival. There is an odd belief you've heard whispered. Usually during storms like this, some say a fire left unattended grows offended, turning against the household. A dying fire is said to invite misfortune. Not because of cold, but because neglect angers something unseen. Whether people truly believed this or simply used it to enforce vigilance is hard to say. What's clear is that no one lets the fire die willingly. Ever. You glance at the woodpile. Smaller than you'd like. Each piece has weight beyond its size. You calculate nights in your head, dividing fuel by cold, cold by endurance. This mental arithmetic is constant. Fire teaches patience. Rush it, and you burn through resources. Starve it, and you suffer. Balance keeps you alive. As hours pass, the fire settles into a steady rhythm. Flames shrink. Embers glow. The room dims. Shadows stretch and soften. You feel drowsy. Not from comfort, but from exhaustion. Maintaining warmth is labor. Even sitting still costs energy when the air steals heat from your skin. Before sleep, you make one last adjustment. Ash over embers. A log angled just so. A quiet check of sparks. This moment feels ceremonial, though no one would call it that. It's simply what must be done. Outside, the blizzard continues its assault, uncaring. Inside, the fire holds. Barely. Bravely. Against it, you lean back, letting the uneven warmth cradle you, trusting embers and habit to carry you through the dark. The smoke grows heavier as the night deepens, settling low before drifting upward in lazy, irritated coils. It no longer surprises you. You've lived inside this haze for as long as you can remember. Smoke is not an event here. It is a condition. You taste it on your tongue. Faintly bitter, mixed with damp wood and old ash. Your eyes burn just enough to remind you they exist. You blink slowly, accepting the discomfort as part of staying alive. In homes like this, smoke never truly leaves, without a chimney to draw it cleanly away. It lingers, sliding along beams, staining thatch, seeping into clothing and hair. Generations grow up breathing it. The ceiling above you is blackened, a record of countless winters layered one on top of another. This is not neglect. It's normal. In many medieval English homes, the colour of the roof timbers told the story of how long a family had survived there. You shift again, careful not to stir the air too much. Sudden movement makes smoke swirl unpredictably, stinging worse for a moment before settling. You learn to move slowly indoors, not from politeness, but from experience. Quick gestures bring consequences. Even laughter can make your eyes water. There's a particular sound that fills the room when smoke thickens. A soft chorus of sniffing. A muffled cough quickly swallowed. Someone clearing their throat and pretending it's nothing. No one comments on it. Drawing attention only makes it feel heavier. Children learn early not to cry too loudly in winter. Tears mix with smoke and cold, making breathing harder. Quiet endurance is taught without words. It's easy to imagine smoke as an enemy, but you've learned it's also a protector. Smoke drives away insects that might otherwise nest in thatch. It helps preserve wood, slowing rot. It discourages mold in damp weather, Some households even believed smoke carried protective qualities, pushing illness away from the hearth. A strange idea, perhaps, but one that offered comfort when sickness felt like an invisible predator. There's an old winter habit you remember, something your elders do without explanation. When the smoke grows especially thick, they throw a pinch of dried herbs onto the fire. Not enough to change the heat, just enough to alter the smell. Sage, juniper, whatever is left from warmer months. It doesn't clear the smoke, but it softens it, makes the air feel less hostile. A small mercy, a sensory trick to make endurance easier. Your lungs work harder tonight. Cold air outside is dense. Warm, smoky air inside feels heavy by comparison. Each breath requires a choice. Deep enough to satisfy. Shallow enough not to sting. You find a rhythm. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Slow. Controlled. This is not something you consciously learned. It's instinct. Refined by nights like this. Those who study the period still don't entirely agree on how bodies adapted to this environment. Some argue constant smoke exposure shortened lives. Others point out that people developed remarkable resilience, surviving conditions that would alarm us today. What remains clear is that smoke was accepted because the alternative was worse. A clean, cold room would be a death sentence. You glance toward the sleeping area, if it can be called that. Straw laid thick, pressed down by countless nights of use. Blankets that smell faintly of smoke no matter how often they're aired. Smoke seeps into everything. It becomes part of you. Your clothes carry it. Your hair holds it, even outside. When the wind shifts just right, you smell it on yourself and feel a strange comfort. Smoke means home. The fire shifts, sending a new wave upward. Your eyes sting sharply this time. You squeeze them shut for a moment, letting tears form and spill over. No one remarks on it. Everyone's eyes look like that by midwinter. Red, tired, glossy in the low light. It's a shared look, one that doesn't need explanation. There's another sound now beneath the wind, a faint whistling where smoke escapes through the roof. Tiny gaps between thatch bundles let it slip out in thin streams. In summer, those same gaps leak rain. In winter, they leak smoke and heat together. The house breathes through them. Too many gaps and the fire struggles. Too few and smoke suffocates the room. Balance again. Always balance. You remember hearing an older villager once claim that houses which trapped too much smoke angered the spirits of the dead, forcing them to linger. The story was half warning, half excuse to keep vents open. Whether believed or not, it reinforced a practical truth. Air must move, even in the cold. The smoke also marks time. As the night wears on, it grows thicker. Fires burn lower. Wood smoulders more than it flames. Morning smoke smells different, thinner somehow, mixed with the promise of light. Right now, the smoke is heavy, tired, like the night itself. Your chest tightens slightly. Not panic, just awareness. You adjust your position, angling your head closer to the floor, where air is marginally clearer. Everyone learns this trick. Smoke rises. Cleaner air settles low. Children are taught to sleep closer to the ground when fires burn strong. Another small lesson passed quietly, one that can make the difference between comfort and misery. Outside, the blizzard shows no sign of easing. Wind howls, then pauses, then returns with renewed force. Snow scrapes against the walls. A dry, restless sound. Inside, smoke dulls the noise, softens edges. It creates a cocoon of sorts. Visibility shrinks. The world becomes firelight, shadow, and breath. You feel drowsiness creeping in, not because you're warm, but because exhaustion weighs heavier than cold. Your eyes flutter. Smoke blurs the edges of the room. Faces become silhouettes. The fire reduces to a pulsing orange heart. You let yourself sink lower, trusting habit and shared vigilance to keep the fire alive and the room safe. Before sleep fully claims you, you take one more careful breath, measured and slow. Smoke fills your lungs, warm and irritating and familiar. It's not pleasant. It's not romantic. But it's survival. And for tonight, survival is enough. Cold announces itself first through skin, long before it reaches bone. You feel it along your forearms, your neck, the backs of your knees where clothing never quite seals. Clothing here is not fashion, it is architecture. Each layer serves a purpose, trapping pockets of air, slowing the steady theft of warmth from your body. You tug at the edge of your tunic, pulling it lower, tucking it closer, shaping it the way you've been taught since childhood. Wool is your closest ally, not the soft kind imagined centuries later, but coarse, stubborn wool that scratches and smells faintly of sheep, no matter how often it's aired. It insulates even when damp, which matters more than softness ever could. Linen sits beneath it, lighter, smoother, absorbing sweat so your skin doesn't chill too quickly. This layering system is so ingrained that you barely think about it. You dress for winter the same way you breathe, automatically, because forgetting would hurt. Most people around you wear the same few garments day after day through the cold months. Washing is rare, drying is difficult. Clothes are aired near the fire when possible. Stiff with smoke and heat, the smell becomes familiar, almost reassuring. It signals readiness. A garment that smells of smoke has survived another night. You adjust the weight across your shoulders, feeling where seams press and where fabric has thinned over time. Repairs are constant. A small tear can become dangerous when wind finds it. Needles move often in winter, stitching patches onto elbows and hems. This quiet work keeps cold out as effectively as any wall. Surviving winter depends as much on thread as timber. There's an old saying you've heard murmured more than once: better a heavy cloak than a brave heart. It's not poetry meant for songs. It's practical wisdom. Cloaks are everything out here. Thick wool, sometimes lined with fur if fortune allows, clasped tightly against the chest. You wrap yours now, crossing it deliberately, overlapping edges to block drafts. The weight is comforting, even when it pulls on tired shoulders. Your legs matter more than you'd expect. Cold creeps upward from the ground relentlessly. Hose or leggings hug your calves, sometimes doubled when weather turns cruel. Some people wrap strips of cloth around their legs for extra protection, a habit borrowed from travelers and soldiers. It looks awkward. It works. Style has little authority in winter. You notice how everyone instinctively covers their heads. Hoods pulled low, caps pressed tight. Hair does little to stop heat loss, and uncovered heads ache quickly in cold air. Children are scolded gently but firmly for letting hoods slip. It's not about obedience. It's about keeping them alive. One curious habit persists in colder regions. People stuff scraps of cloth or wool into shoes to insulate feet. Footwear is simple. Thin leather turned inside out. Warmth comes from what you add, not what the shoe provides. Damp is the enemy. Once feet grow wet, they grow dangerous. You check yours now, flexing toes, feeling for numbness, a little stiffness. Still good. As the night deepens, bodies cool despite layers. Clothing slows heat loss, but it does not stop it. You shift closer to others, sharing warmth where fabric fails. Wool against wool creates friction, heat building subtly where bodies touch. This closeness is practical, not sentimental. It's understood without explanation. Some households save animal skins for the worst nights. Sheepskin, goat, whatever is available, draped over shoulders or laid across legs. Fur traps warmth effectively. Not everyone has access to this luxury. Those who do treat it carefully, airing it when possible, guarding it from damp. Fur is not just comfort, it's insurance. There's a small, often overlooked detail in winter clothing habits. People avoid tightness. Tight garments restrict movement and circulation, making cold worse. Loose layers trap air, and air holds warmth. You loosen your belt slightly, letting fabric fall naturally. It feels counterintuitive if you're used to modern fits. But it works. You remember hearing someone once claim that wearing too many layers confuses the body, making it forget how to warm itself. Whether believed or not, most people add layers gradually, responding to cold rather than anticipating it. It's a constant conversation between skin and cloth. Adjustment after adjustment through the night. There's no agreement among modern observers on how much medieval clothing truly protected against extreme cold. Some argue it was surprisingly effective when used correctly. Others suggest people simply endured more discomfort than we would tolerate today. What's certain is that these garments were shaped by centuries of trial, error, and survival. Every seam carries memory. You shift again, feeling the weight of fabric settle differently. The cloak slides slightly, and you correct it at once. Even small drafts feel sharp now. Cold finds opportunities quickly. You've learned not to give it any. The fire flickers, sending a pulse of warmth toward you. It doesn't reach your feet. It barely kisses your knees. Clothing bridges that gap. You press your hands beneath your cloak, trapping heat close to your core. Fingers thaw slowly, painfully. You welcome it. Pain means blood is moving again. Around you, others make similar adjustments. Quiet and practiced. A hood pulled tighter, a sleeve tugged down, a patch checked by touch alone. No one speaks much. Speech wastes warmth. Breath matters. You speak when necessary. Otherwise, you save your energy. Outside, the storm continues. Indifferent. Snow piles higher. Wind searches for weakness. Inside, layers hold. Not perfectly, not comfortably, but enough. Enough to keep you breathing. Enough to carry you toward morning. As your body finally settles into a fragile equilibrium between heat lost and heat held, you feel something close to calm. Not because danger has passed, but because you've done what can be done. Wool wraps you. Linen cushions you. Habit steadies you. You let your eyes close. Trusting cloth, closeness, and long-learned knowledge to keep the cold at bay for a little while longer. Sleep, when it comes, is nothing like the soft surrender you might imagine. It is strategic. You prepare for it the way you prepare for a journey, knowing once you begin, movement will be difficult and mistakes costly. The place you choose, the position you settle into, the bodies you align yourself with, all of it matters. You lower yourself carefully onto the bedding, which is really a collection of compromises. Straw packed down into a shallow mattress, a rough blanket folded twice, maybe 3 times if fortune allows. Another layer laid crosswise to block drafts creeping along the floor. Nothing here is plush. Everything is purposeful. You test the surface with your weight, adjusting until pressure eases from hips and shoulders. Cold seeps upward immediately. You feel it through fabric, through straw, through bone. Beds in medieval England were rarely individual. Even when wooden frames existed, they were shared. Space was warmth. Warmth was survival. You position yourself close to others, not touching at first, then gradually closer as the night demands it. Bodies radiate heat slowly, unevenly. You learn where it gathers best. Along the back, at the chest, between shoulders pressed together. You curl instinctively, drawing knees toward chest, folding inward like an animal in winter. This posture protects your core, reduces exposed surface, traps heat where it matters most. You've slept this way since childhood. Straight limbs lose warmth too quickly. Curled ones keep it. Someone shifts beside you. You feel the movement through the bedding, a ripple of redistributed warmth. You don't open your eyes. Adjustments happen quietly, half asleep. Guided by habit rather than thought, a shoulder nestles closer. A foot tucks under a calf. No words are exchanged. Winter teaches silent cooperation. Shared sleeping is so common that it barely registers as unusual. Privacy is a luxury reserved for warmer seasons. In winter, closeness outweighs modesty. Children sleep beside parents. Siblings share space. Guests are folded in wherever there's room. It's understood that warmth belongs to the group, not the individual. There's an old belief whispered in some households that sleeping alone in deep winter invites illness, as if cold prefers solitary bodies. Whether superstition or observation, the result is the same. No one chooses isolation if it can be avoided. Solitude feels dangerous now. Exposed. You pull the blanket higher, tucking it beneath your chin, careful not to cover your mouth. Breathing into fabric dampens it quickly, and dampness steals heat fast. You angle your face just enough to keep air moving. It's a small but important habit. Learned early. Moist breath freezes hair. Wet cloth chills skin. You avoid both. The fire behind you crackles softly. Lower now. Steadier. Its light flickers against closed eyelids. An orange pulse you sense rather than see. Even asleep, part of you remains aware of it. Fire is never fully forgotten. Some nights, someone is tasked with waking to check it, feeding embers if needed. Other nights, everyone trusts ash and luck to carry them through. Tonight feels like the latter. Straw rustles beneath you as you settle. It smells faintly sweet, mixed with smoke and old earth. Straw mattresses were replaced often when possible, but winter limits fresh supplies. What you lie on has supported many nights before this one. It has memory. Compressed places where bodies curl most often. Warmth leaves patterns. There's a strange comfort in these familiar depressions. They guide you into the same position others have found workable. Survival leaves grooves. Literal and figurative. You follow them without question. As sleep edges closer, cold tests you again. Extremities ache dully. Fingers stiffen despite being tucked close. Toes protest. You rub feet together slowly, generating a little friction. A little heat. Someone else does the same nearby. The sound of fabric brushing fabric is soft, rhythmic, a shared lullaby of survival. You think briefly about dreams, about how cold shapes them. Winter dreams are heavy, slow, often filled with waiting. People speak of dreaming of warmth, of sun, of green fields buried now beneath snow. Others dream of storms, endless and pressing. No one expects pleasant rest. Sleep is not escape, it's maintenance. There's a small, easily missed detail in how people arrange themselves. Those weakest often sleep closer to the center. Children, the elderly, anyone ill. Stronger bodies form a loose barrier, absorbing drafts, sharing warmth outward. This arrangement is rarely discussed. It simply happens. A quiet geometry shaped by care and necessity. You feel the breathing around you settle into rhythm. Slow inhales, long exhales. Shared air warming gradually. This collective breath changes the room, raising temperature just enough to notice. Not comfort, relief. The difference between pain and tolerable discomfort. Somewhere outside. Wind slams against the wall again. Snow shifts. The sound is distant now, dulled by layers of thatch and exhaustion. Inside, the house holds, bodies hold, sleep thickens. There's no certainty in this rest. People wake in the night to check limbs, to adjust coverings, to ensure numbness hasn't crept too far. Fingers are flexed, toes are wiggled. Pain is welcomed again as proof of circulation. You perform these checks half asleep, barely remembering them in the morning. You drift deeper now, consciousness loosening its grip. Cold no longer feels sharp, just present, like a weight you've learned to carry. Thoughts slow. Images blur. Firelight fades behind closed eyes. Before sleep fully claims you, a final awareness settles in. You are warm enough, not safe, not comfortable, but enough. Enough to keep breathing. Enough to wake again. And in winter like this, Enough is everything. Warmth becomes something you measure in inches now, not degrees. An arm's length closer, a shoulder pressed tighter, a shared breath, warming the space between faces. You become acutely aware of bodies around you, not as individuals, but as sources of heat, each one quietly contributing to the fragile balance that keeps the night survivable. You feel it most along your back, where another person's body rests just close enough to matter, not touching constantly, but near enough that warmth seeps through layers of wool and linen. This is the hidden mathematics of winter sleep, bodies arranged with intention, forming loose chains of heat that slow the cold's advance. No one announces these adjustments. They happen instinctively, guided by years of nights like this. In deep winter, closeness is not intimacy. It is infrastructure. Medieval households understood this without debate. Heat rises, spreads, dissipates quickly in open rooms. Human bodies compensate where walls fail. When storms trap families indoors for days, shared warmth becomes as essential as food. Records from the period suggest that sleeping alone during harsh winters was rare outside monasteries or the homes of the very wealthy. You notice how people position themselves back to back or side to side, maximizing surface contact without restricting breathing. Chests remain free, faces turned slightly away. No one wants another's breath directly in their mouth through the night. This arrangement balances warmth with air. Another quiet compromise learned early. Children are drawn inward, nestled where heat concentrates. You can feel the smaller body near your chest. It's breathing shallow and quick at first, then slower as sleep deepens. Protecting them is automatic. Cold takes the young and the old first. Everyone knows this. The night teaches it repeatedly. There's an odd comfort in this collective warmth that lingers even when cold persists. The ache dulls slightly. Muscles unclench. Joints stop protesting quite so loudly. Your body, sensing that it is not alone, allows itself to rest more fully. This response is ancient, deeper than language. Solitary cold feels threatening. Shared cold feels survivable. You shift just a little, bringing your knees closer to someone else's legs. Wool brushes wool. Heat pools there briefly, then spreads. The movement wakes no one. These small adjustments are constant through the night, happening beneath awareness. A choreography refined by necessity. In some households, animals share this warmth as well. Dogs curl at feet, cats press against chests. Even livestock, housed nearby or separated only by a thin wall, contribute indirectly. Their body heat bleeds through wood and earth, raising the temperature just enough to matter. This closeness between species is practical, not sentimental. Warmth doesn't care who provides it. There's a belief that lingers in certain villages, repeated softly during winters like this. It's said that cold hunts the lonely first, that a body left by itself draws winter's attention, while groups confuse it, scattering its grip. Whether myth or metaphor, it reinforces behavior that saves lives. People cluster, people share. Your breathing slows further now, syncing with the rhythm of those around you. Inhale, exhale. A subtle fog of shared warmth builds beneath blankets and cloaks. It never becomes hot. It barely becomes comfortable. But it steadies. It stabilizes. That's enough to quiet the mind. There's a particular smell that comes with shared warmth. Wool warmed by bodies. Smoke embedded deep in fibers. Human skin slightly damp from effort and heat. It's not unpleasant once you're used to it. It smells like survival. Like winter nights endured rather than escaped. You remember, faintly, that some wealthier households slept separately, each person in their own bed, heavy curtains, feather mattresses, tapestries hung thick on walls. It sounds luxurious. But even there, winter found its way in. Stone walls leach heat mercilessly. Fireplaces draw warmth upward and away. Many nobles complained of cold chambers despite layers of cloth and wealth. Comfort was relative. Endurance was universal. Here, among shared bodies. You feel marginally better prepared than someone isolated behind tapestries. Your warmth comes from living sources, responsive and forgiving. If one body cools, another compensates. If the fire falters, you draw closer together. This adaptability matters more than materials. A sudden gust rattles the wall again. You tense briefly, then relax. The house holds, bodies hold. The moment passes. You tuck your chin slightly, conserving heat at the throat. An instinctive gesture mirrored by others around you. Blankets rise and fall as people settle again. Sleep thickens, but awareness never fully disappears. Part of you remains alert, monitoring sensation. Too cold, shift closer. Too warm, unlikely, but possible near the fire. The body learns to make these corrections without waking fully. Survival does not require consciousness. It requires responsiveness. There's a subtle hierarchy in shared warmth that you've never consciously named. Stronger bodies on the outside, weaker ones protected. This arrangement shifts as people age, fall ill, recover. Roles change. Tonight, you find yourself somewhere in between, both giving and receiving warmth. It feels right. Your feet finally lose their sharp ache, settling into a dull awareness. Toes still cold, but no longer painful. You relax them slightly, careful not to expose them. A blanket edge is adjusted. Someone else's calf presses gently against yours. Heat flows slowly, stubbornly. Outside, the storm continues its long assault. But inside, time has softened. Hours pass unnoticed. The world narrows to breath, warmth, and weight. Your thoughts drift lazily, untethered. Images of summer fields surface briefly, then fade. Green is a memory, not a promise. As sleep deepens, the collective warmth steadies into something almost reliable. Not safe, not guaranteed, but present, and presence matters. You let yourself sink fully now, trusting the quiet alliance of bodies around you to hold the cold at bay until morning. Light thins the night. Hunger moves differently in winter. It doesn't arrive all at once. Sharp and demanding. It settles in slowly, like cold itself, thinning strength a little more each day until even small tasks feel heavy. You feel it now. A quiet emptiness beneath your ribs. Not painful yet, just present. You know better than to ignore it. In winter, hunger and cold work together. One weakens your body, the other finishes the job. Food here is chosen for endurance, not pleasure. What you eat tonight was prepared months ago, back when the air was warm and the fields still gave something back. Bread baked hard enough to last, meat salted until moisture fled it, cheese aged carefully, wrapped and stored where rodents couldn't reach. These foods are not exciting, but they endure. And endurance is the point. You tear a piece of bread slowly, feeling its resistance. Fresh bread is a memory now. This loaf is dense, heavy in the hand, darker than you'd prefer. You chew deliberately, jaw working, drawing out what little softness remains. Bread like this fills the stomach and steadies the body, even when flavor is scarce. It's the backbone of winter survival. Salted meat waits nearby, cut thin to make it last. Too much at once is wasteful. Too little invites weakness. You slice a narrow strip, chewing slowly, letting salt pull moisture from your mouth. Thirst follows immediately. You swallow carefully, already reaching for ale. Water is unreliable in winter. Wells freeze. Streams ice over. Melted snow carries dirt and sickness. So you drink ale instead. Weak and cloudy. Barely intoxicating. It offers calories, warmth, and safety all at once. Children drink it too, diluted further. This is ordinary. No one thinks twice about it. You sip, feeling warmth spread briefly through your chest before fading. The effect is small but real. Ale doesn't heat you for long, but it gives your body fuel to generate its own warmth. In winter, that matters more than taste ever could. Meals grow simpler as storms stretch on. Variety disappears. Meat, bread, maybe a bit of dried peas or beans if supplies allow. Sometimes onions, stored carefully, still firm enough to cut. Vegetables are rare by now. Roots last longer, but even they eventually soften and rot. You eat what remains and hope it carries you far enough. There's a quiet discipline to winter eating. You don't snack mindlessly. You don't eat out of boredom. Every bite is measured against tomorrow's needs. Hunger sharpens this awareness. You learn the difference between appetite and necessity. One can be ignored. The other cannot. You remember an old habit your elders follow. Before storms like this, they eat slightly more than usual, if supplies allow. Not indulgence, preparation. The body burns more fuel in cold. Even at rest, those extra calories become insulation of a sort, carried beneath skin and muscle. It's not much, but it helps. A lesser-known detail of winter survival is how often food is eaten warm, even if it must be reheated repeatedly. Cold food chills the body further, so scraps are warmed near the fire. Broth, if available, is sipped slowly. Warmth enters through the stomach and spreads outward. Subtle but comforting. Even thin soup feels like relief on nights like this. You finish chewing and swallow carefully, savoring the moment before hunger returns. It always does. Winter eating never satisfies fully. It stabilizes. That's all anyone expects. There's talk sometimes, quiet and half serious, about hunger sharpening the mind. Some say empty stomachs make people more alert, more cautious. Others argue the opposite, that hunger dulls thought and slows reaction. The truth, like most things, probably sits somewhere between. What's clear is that starvation creeps quietly. You watch for it in others. Sunken cheeks, slowed movement, irritability. These signs matter. Children are watched especially closely. Extra bread is slipped their way when possible. Adults lie about their own hunger easily. They are less convincing when it comes to the young. Cold takes them faster. Everyone knows this. You wipe your fingers on cloth, careful not to waste crumbs. Nothing edible is discarded casually in winter. Even crumbs are collected, added to tomorrow's meal. Waste feels dangerous now, almost offensive. Food is protection, as important as fire and shelter. There's a curious practice some households keep during prolonged storms. They chew slowly on dried herbs or seeds, not for nutrition, but to trick the body into feeling fed. Fennel, anise, whatever remains from summer stores. It doesn't provide energy, but it occupies the mouth, calms the stomach, a small psychological shield against hunger's edge. As you settle again, stomach no longer empty but far from full. You feel steadier, not strong, just less hollow. That steadiness matters. Cold is easier to endure when hunger isn't gnawing at the same time. The fire shifts, sending another pulse of warmth. You angle yourself to catch it, hand resting briefly against your stomach. Heat and food work together. Neither is enough alone. Outside, snow continues to pile, burying fields that once fed you. You don't dwell on that now. Winter thinking stays close. Immediate. Tomorrow's meal. Tonight's warmth. Survival shrinks the world to manageable size. As your body settles back into rest, fueled just enough to keep heat moving, you feel a quiet gratitude for stored bread, for salt, for ale. These simple things hold the line between life and collapse. You close your eyes again. Hunger muted for now, trusting preparation and restraint to carry you through another long, frozen night. The ale warms your hands before it ever reaches your throat. You cradle the cup for a moment, letting heat soak into your fingers, feeling stiffness ease just slightly. In winter, drinking is rarely rushed. Liquids matter too much. You lift the cup carefully, mindful of spills, Even a small loss feels foolish when storms keep you pinned indoors, and supplies must last. The ale is weak, cloudy, more bread than drink. It smells faintly sour, with a hint of grain and smoke clinging to the rim. This is intentional. Strong ale belongs to feast days, not survival. What you drink now is meant to nourish without dulling your senses. Enough warmth to help, not enough to blur judgment. Winter demands alertness even in rest. Water, for all its simplicity, becomes unreliable once frost settles in. Wells glaze over. Buckets freeze solid overnight. Streams carry ice and debris. Their surfaces treacherous and their depths uncertain. Melted snow looks clean but carries dirt, ash, and sickness gathered from wherever it landed. People learn this through bitter experience. Illness spreads faster when bodies are already weakened by cold. So ale becomes the safe choice. The brewing process, imperfect as it is, makes it safer to drink than untreated water. It also delivers calories. Modest but valuable. You feel that now. A gentle warmth spreading outward from your chest. A brief sense of steadiness that pairs well with the fire's glow. Children drink it too, watered down until it barely tastes of anything at all. No one finds this strange. It's simply part of winter life. Milk spoils quickly. Water betrays. Ale remains. It keeps bodies moving. Keeps spirits from sinking too far. You take another small sip. Then stop. Overdoing it invites trouble. Alcohol dulls awareness. And awareness keeps you alive. You've seen what happens when someone drinks too much in the cold. Sluggish movements. Missed cues. A stumble too close to the fire or too far from it. Winter does not forgive carelessness. The cup is passed quietly, shared among those nearby. Sharing isn't charity here. It's balance. No one drinks deeply while others go without. Winter enforces fairness more strictly than any rule. If one person weakens, everyone becomes more vulnerable. There's a faint comfort in the routine of it. Sip, pause. Warm hands, breathe. These small rituals give structure to long nights when the world outside feels chaotic. Routine steadies the mind as much as the body. Somewhere beyond your awareness, ale has taken on meaning beyond sustenance. It marks time. Morning ale. Evening ale. The small cup before sleep. Each signals a transition, anchoring days that might otherwise blur together under snow and darkness. Without clocks or light, these habits keep time from dissolving completely. You notice how the room responds as people drink. A quiet relaxation. Shoulders ease slightly. Breathing deepens. Not drunkenness, just a shared easing of tension. The fire seems warmer. The smoke less aggressive. Perception shifts subtly when bodies feel supported. There's an old winter saying passed down without ceremony. Drink to warm. Not to forget. It's not a warning so much as guidance. Forgetting leads to mistakes. Warmth keeps you present. You set the cup aside, tucking it close to the fire so it won't freeze. Liquid left unattended turns to slush quickly in this cold. Another small detail learned early. Everything requires attention. Neglect invites loss. As the ale settles, you become aware of another effect. It helps you sleep, not by knocking you out, but by smoothing the edges of discomfort just enough. Cold aches dull. Hunger recedes further. Your body feels marginally more cooperative. That cooperation is precious. There are stories told sometimes, quietly, about travelers who relied too heavily on drink to survive winter journeys. They felt warm, stopped moving, lay down in snow that looked inviting for just a moment. Those stories are warnings dressed as gossip. Everyone has heard them. Everyone takes them seriously. Here, inside the house, ale is safer. Movement is limited. Fire is present. Others are nearby to notice changes. Context matters. Winter teaches that nothing is inherently safe or dangerous. Everything depends on how and where it's used. The storm outside surges again, rattling the walls. Snow scrapes along the roof with a dry hiss. Inside, the sound feels distant, filtered through warmth and smoke and shared breath. You pull your cloak tighter, one hand resting against your stomach, feeling both heat and fullness linger there. Your thoughts drift briefly to summer, to water drawn cold and clear from streams, to drinks taken without calculation. That world feels unreal now, like a story told by someone else. Winter reality is narrower, more focused. Drink is warmth. Drink is fuel. Drink is survival. You shift, careful not to disturb others. Someone nearby exhales slowly. Deep in sleep, another murmurs something unintelligible, then settles again. The room breathes as one organism, supported by fire, food, cloth, and liquid. There's a subtle satisfaction in knowing that this simple drink, brewed months ago, planned for carefully, now plays its part in keeping you alive. Preparation reveals itself in moments like this. What was once routine labor becomes lifeline. As drowsiness returns, heavier now, you tuck your hands beneath your cloak again. Trapping residual warmth, ale does its quiet work. Fire holds, bodies hold. The night stretches on, but it feels more manageable than before. You let your eyes close, trusting that small, ordinary choices made correctly will carry you through the remaining hours of darkness. Work does not pause just because the world has turned white. That is the first hard truth winter teaches you. Snow piles high. Wind scours the land. Fingers stiffen and breath burns the throat. Still, work waits. If anything, it grows heavier. Survival depends on motion, and motion depends on will. You wake not because you are rested, but because stillness lets cold settle too deeply. Lying too long invites stiffness that makes standing painful, sometimes impossible. So you rise when the fire dims and the room grows sharper, pulling yourself up slowly, joints protesting as blood remembers where to go. The first moments upright are always the worst. You brace yourself, hands pressed to thighs, breathing through the ache until it eases enough to move. Outside, the storm has reshaped everything. Paths you knew by heart are gone, erased beneath drifts. Fences vanish. Landmarks shrink or disappear entirely. Snow smooths the world into something unfamiliar. Treacherous. You step carefully, testing each patch of ground before committing weight. A wrong step can mean a twisted ankle, and a twisted ankle in winter can mean death. Yet animals still need feeding. Fires still need fuel. Roofs must be checked for collapse. Water, frozen solid overnight, must be broken free. These tasks cannot wait for mercy from the sky. They are done because they must be done. You pull your cloak tighter and step into the cold. The shock steals your breath for a moment. Sharp and immediate. Air feels solid, slicing into lungs. You pause, letting your body adjust. Then move again. Movement generates warmth. Stillness drains it. Snow muffles sound, making the world eerily quiet despite the wind. Your boots crunch softly. Rhythm, steady and deliberate. You follow familiar lines as best you can, counting steps where landmarks once guided you. This mental mapping is another quiet skill winter sharpens. You hold the landscape in your head because it no longer shows itself willingly. The work itself is clumsy now. Hands wrapped in cloth lack dexterity. Tools slip. Wood resists splitting. Fibers stiff with cold. Every task takes longer, demands more effort. You pace yourself carefully. Exhaustion is as dangerous as cold. Overreach. And you'll pay for it later when your body has nothing left to give. There's a practical wisdom often repeated in winter. Never sweat if you can avoid it. Sweat freezes. Damp cloth pulls heat from skin mercilessly. So you work in short bursts, stopping before effort turns wet. You pause often, catching breath, letting steam rise harmlessly into the air. This restraint feels counterintuitive when work piles up, but it keeps you alive. Animals sense winter's threat as keenly as you do. Livestock huddle together, breath rising in clouds. Their warmth is valuable. You move among them gently, careful not to startle. A panicked animal can injure itself or you, and injuries heal poorly in cold. You check for ice buildup on fur, for signs of weakness. Their survival feeds yours. The bond is mutual and unromantic. Snow must be cleared from roofs when it grows too heavy. You shovel carefully, aware of the danger overhead. Ice breaks loose unpredictably. You stand to the side, never directly beneath the edge. Experience teaches caution better than instruction. Too many have learned this lesson only once. There's a peculiar fatigue that comes with winter labor. It's not just muscle strain. It's a deep weariness that settles into bones. A sense that the season itself presses down. You feel it as you work. A weight behind the eyes. A slowing of thought. You counter it with routine. One task at a time. One step after another. Thinking too far ahead invites despair. You work with others when possible. Shared labor conserves energy and lifts spirits. Someone breaks ice while another carries water. Someone splits wood while another stacks it inside to dry. Cooperation isn't idealism here. It's efficiency. Fewer trips outside. Less exposure. More warmth shared afterward. There's an old observation passed quietly between people who endure many winters. Cold work keeps you alive longer than cold rest. Movement forces blood to circulate. Keeps fingers responsive. Toes aware. You notice numbness creeping in and adjust. Swinging arms. Stomping feet. Making heat where you can. Pain warns you when to stop. You listen. Time blurs outside. The sky remains grey, offering little sense of hour. Snow continues to fall, sometimes lightly, sometimes in sudden bursts that erase what you've just cleared. It's frustrating, but you've learned not to fight it emotionally. Anger wastes energy. You clear what you must and let the rest be. Eventually, work brings you back inside. The door closes behind you, shutting out wind but trapping cold within clothing. Snow melts slowly against wool, dampening it. You move closer to the fire at once, not too close, letting heat drive moisture out gradually. Rushing risks burns. Patience again. As feeling returns to fingers, pain flares sharply, then fades. You flex them slowly, grateful. Not everyone is so lucky. Frostbite is a quiet danger, creeping in unnoticed until damage is done. You watch for it in yourself and others. Pale skin that doesn't redden again. Numbness that lingers. Early action can save flesh. Delay costs it. You sit, breathing hard, heart slowing. Work has warmed you, but it has also spent you. That trade is unavoidable. Winter survival is constant exchange. Energy for heat. Heat for life. Outside, the storm continues its work. Inside, you rest briefly. Knowing rest cannot last long. There will be more to do. There always is. Still, for this moment, you allow yourself the comfort of having acted, of having met the cold with motion rather than fear. In medieval England, survival through blizzards depended less on courage than on persistence. You don't defeat winter. You outlast it. One task at a time. The animals are awake long before dawn. Restless in a way you've learned to recognize. Cold sharpens their instincts. They shift. Stamp. Breathe harder. Crowd closer together without instruction. You hear them through the wall before you see them. A low chorus of movement and breath that tells you the temperature has dropped again during the night. You pull on your cloak and step toward the byre. Grateful it's attached, or at least close. Distance matters now. Every step outside costs warmth you'll have to earn back later. When you open the door, a wave of thick, animal-warmed air rolls toward you. It smells of hay, dung, damp fur, and something alive and steady beneath it all. Compared to the house, it feels almost warm. People here have always known this truth, even if they never phrase it aloud. Animals are heat, living, breathing heat. In winter, that matters more than milk, wool, or meat. Keeping livestock close is not sentimentality. It's physics. Cows stand pressed flank to flank, steam lifting from their backs. Sheep huddle so tightly their bodies form a single mass of wool and breath. Even pigs, usually indifferent, cluster together, squealing softly when disturbed. Their combined warmth raises the temperature of the space noticeably. You linger longer than necessary, hands extended, letting heat soak in through fingers still stiff from the night. Housing animals near people is common here, especially in harsher regions. Sometimes they share the same building, separated only by a low wall. Sometimes they occupy an attached structure, close enough that warmth bleeds through timber and earth. This arrangement is deliberate. The heat produced by animals helps keep nearby rooms from freezing completely, especially at night when fires burn low. You scatter feed slowly, careful not to rush. Cold animals eat more, burning fuel just to maintain body heat. Well-fed livestock survive winter better, and living animals are warmer than dead ones. This calculation is never far from mind. Slaughter is postponed when possible, not just to preserve future food, but to preserve present warmth. There's a quiet rhythm to caring for animals in winter. Movements are slower, voices are softer. Sudden noise startles bodies already stressed by cold. You stroke a flank briefly as you pass, feeling the solid heat beneath coarse hair. It steadies you in a way nothing else quite does. The floor here is layered with straw, thick enough to insulate hooves from frozen ground. As animals move, they churn it, generating a little heat, a little friction. This constant motion keeps the space from growing truly cold. You make a mental note to add more straw later. Bedding matters. For them and for you. There's an old saying passed down through winters that people rarely question. A warm beast is a blessing twice over. It keeps itself alive and helps keep you alive too. No one bothers to dress it up. The meaning is obvious on nights like this. Not everyone approves of such closeness. Some complain of smell, of noise, of filth. They're not wrong. Living near animals is messy. Disease can spread. Parasites thrive. Yet when storms trap you indoors and cold gnaws at walls and bones, these concerns shrink. Cleanliness is negotiable. Warmth is not. You remember hearing a tale about a family that tried keeping their animals farther away one winter, hoping for quieter nights. The storm that followed froze their water solid and dropped the temperature so low their hearth couldn't compensate. By morning, they had lost livestock and nearly lost themselves. After that, no one in the village questioned tradition again. Animals contribute warmth even when unseen. Their breath rises, condenses, and settles, slightly humidifying the air. Dry cold bites harder than damp cold. This subtle change makes a difference, easing skin and lungs just enough to notice. You breathe deeply here, chest loosening. Dogs move freely between spaces, curling wherever heat gathers most. They are efficient little furnaces, instinctively finding warm spots at feet or along walls shared with animals. Cats do the same, pressing into crooks of elbows or settling on chests when allowed. Their presence is practical before it is affectionate. You notice how the animals respond to your presence. They shift but do not panic. Familiarity breeds calm. Calm conserves energy. Winter rewards steadiness in all living things. There's a curious habit some families keep during the worst cold. They bring young or weak animals closer still, sometimes inside the main living space overnight. Lambs, calves, even chickens tucked into baskets near the hearth. It looks strange to an outsider. It feels obvious to those who've lost animals to frost before. Living warmth is too valuable to waste. Not everyone agrees on how widespread this practice was. Some accounts suggest it was common in poorer households. Others argue it happened only during extreme cold. The truth likely varied from place to place, shaped by need rather than custom. What remains consistent is the logic behind it. You finish your checks, satisfied that everyone is fed and settled. Before leaving, you pause again, letting animal warmth wrap around you. It feels indulgent, but you know better. You'll carry this heat back with you, tucked into muscles and blood, giving you a small advantage against the cold waiting outside. When you step back into the wind, the contrast is sharp. The door closes behind you. Cutting off that pocket of warmth, you pull your cloak tight. Grateful you lingered a moment longer. Every bit helps. Inside the house, you sit near the wall closest to the animals. You've learned this trick too. That side stays marginally warmer through the night. You rest your back against it, feeling faint vibrations through timber as animals shift. Their presence is reassuring, a reminder that life continues even in deep cold. As you settle, you realize how much of winter survival depends on accepting help from other living things. Fire, food, cloth, and bodies all work together. Animals are part of that system, not separate from it. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the muffled sounds beyond the wall. Breathing, shuffling, a soft lowing. These sounds mean warmth. They mean morning is possible. And for now, that possibility is enough. The wind is never truly silent in winter. Even when it pauses, it leaves behind a memory of itself, a pressure against walls that makes you aware of every weakness in the house. Drafts creep in low and unseen, sliding along the floor, curling around ankles and calves. You feel them first there, a sudden chill that sharpens your focus and pulls you fully awake again. You shift your position instinctively, lifting your feet onto straw, tucking them beneath you, searching for a pocket of air that hasn't yet been stolen. Drafts are the enemy you cannot see. They don't announce themselves like storms. They whisper, slipping through gaps where wall meets floor, where doorframe has warped, where age has pulled materials apart just enough to let winter inside. Houses here were never sealed. They were assembled from what was available, repaired repeatedly, altered slightly with each generation. Gaps were inevitable. In warmer months, those gaps kept smoke moving and air fresh. In winter, they became thin blades of cold. You've learned where they hide. Beneath the door, along the base of the wall, near the roof where thatch lifts just enough to let wind probe. You watch an elder rise quietly and move toward the door, carrying a bundle of rags and straw. This is a familiar ritual. When the wind changes, the house must change with it. They kneel, stuffing cloth into the worst gaps, pressing straw tight with practiced hands. It won't stop the cold entirely, but it will slow it. Slowing winter is often the best you can do. You help when needed, pushing a wad of wool into a crack near the wall. Your fingers brush icy timber. The cold there is startling, sharp enough to sting. You withdraw quickly, rubbing warmth back into your hands. This work is done swiftly, efficiently. Lingering near drafts costs heat you cannot afford to lose. There's a delicate balance to sealing a house. Close it too tightly, and smoke thickens dangerously. Leave it too open, and warmth drains away. People learn this balance through experience rather than instruction. Each house has its own temperament, its own set of leaks and tolerances. You know this one well. You know which gaps matter and which can be ignored. Above you, thatch rustles softly as the wind shifts again. Snow settles unevenly, packing into low spots and sliding off others. Thatch insulates surprisingly well when properly layered, trapping air between stalks. But age thins it. Birds pull strands loose. Rain rots sections from within. Winter reveals every weakness at once. You glance upward, imagining where heat escapes, where cold presses hardest. Some families hang extra cloth from rafters in winter, creating a lower ceiling that traps warmth closer to the floor. It makes the room feel smaller, more crowded, but warmer. You remember doing this once during an especially brutal season. The difference was noticeable enough to justify the discomfort. Walls sweat slightly as warm air meets frozen surfaces. Dampness is dangerous. Wet walls pull heat faster and encourage rot. You watch for dark patches, for places where daub softens. Repairs wait for spring. Winter is about managing damage, not fixing it completely. There's an old belief whispered during storms that wine seeks entry the way water does, finding the weakest point first. Whether believed literally or not, it shapes behavior. You reinforce weak spots instinctively, responding to sound and sensation. A sudden whistle draws attention. A cold line along the floor triggers action. The house becomes something you listen to, not just inhabit. You sit again, closer to the wall shared with the animals, farther from the door. Position matters. Every household develops a winter map, a mental layout of warmer and colder zones. Beds are placed carefully. Work areas shift. Children are kept away from the worst drafts. This constant rearrangement feels normal now, almost invisible. The fire flares briefly as a log settles, sending a wave of warmth outward. You lean into it, timing your movements to catch as much heat as possible before it fades. Drafts tug at that warmth immediately, pulling it upward and outward. You feel the push and pull. Heat and cold locked in endless exchange. You remember hearing that some stone buildings suffered more than timber ones in winter. Stone holds cold stubbornly, drawing warmth from bodies and fires alike, while stone offers protection from weather. It demands constant heat to feel livable. Many who moved into stone homes for prestige found themselves shivering despite thick walls. Comfort, it turns out, depends more on design than materials alone. Here, timber flexes with temperature. Walls breathe. Floors respond. It's imperfect, but forgiving. When wind presses too hard, something gives rather than shatters. You've learned to appreciate that resilience. As the night stretches on, the wind finally eases slightly. Drafts soften. The house relaxes with it, creaking less, settling into a quieter rhythm. You take advantage of the lull, pulling blankets tighter, repositioning straw where it's thinned. Small improvements matter over long hours. You listen again. Fire, breath, animals shifting beyond the wall. The storm hasn't ended, but it has paused. You allow yourself a slow breath, feeling how the air inside is marginally warmer now, marginally steadier. Winter survival is built from moments like this. Not victory, but adjustment. Not comfort, but control regained briefly. You don't conquer the cold. You negotiate with it, draft by draft, hour by hour. As you settle back into stillness, the house feels less hostile, more like an ally that needs constant attention. You rest your palm against the wall, feeling its cold through wood and daub, acknowledging it without fear. For now, the drafts are managed. The wind is quieter. The fire holds. You let your eyes close again, trusting that vigilance. Habit and careful listening will wake you if the balance shifts once more. Darkness stretches differently in winter. It doesn't simply arrive. It settles, thick and deliberate, pressing down until even familiar spaces feel altered. You sense it long before sleep fully loosens its grip. The fire dims. Shadows lengthen. The room shrinks inward as light retreats to a small, flickering core. Night comes early now, far earlier than your body would choose on its own. The sun barely lifts itself above the horizon before sinking again, leaving hours that must be endured rather than filled. You measure time not by clocks, but by how many times the fire needs tending, how often someone shifts, how deep the cold feels in your bones. Inside, light is precious. Rushlights burn slowly, their thin flames trembling at the slightest draft. Tallow candles are rarer, saved for tasks that demand clearer vision. Most of the time, you live by firelight alone. It paints faces in warm orange and deep shadow, exaggerating expressions, softening edges. In this glow, age looks deeper. Youth looks more fragile. You sit quietly, aware that movement draws attention in darkness. Not fear exactly, but caution. In winter, mistakes hide more easily. A misstep near the hearth, a dropped ember, a child wandering too close to flame. You watch, not because you're anxious, but because vigilance has become second nature. Sound changes at night. Snow absorbs noise, muting the outside world until it feels distant and unreal. Wind still howls, but it's softer now, filtered through layers of dark. Inside, every small sound becomes clearer. Breathing, fabric brushing fabric, the soft crackle of embers settling. These sounds anchor you, reminding you that you are not alone. The long night invites thought whether you want it or not. With work paused and movement limited, the mind wanders. Some nights it drifts toward memories of warmth, summer evenings, fields humming with insects, light lingering well past supper. Other nights, thoughts circle closer, returning again and again to immediate concerns. How much wood remains? How long food will last? Whether the storm will ease before supplies thin too far? You notice how people speak less now. Words cost energy. Breath carries warmth, and wasting it feels wrong. Conversation shrinks to essentials. A warning, a request, a quiet reassurance offered when someone shivers too hard. Silence becomes a shared language, comfortable in its own way. Children struggle with the darkness more than adults. Their sense of time is not yet shaped by endurance. Night feels endless to them, filled with unfamiliar sounds and half-seen shapes. You watch as someone draws a child closer, murmuring softly, offering presence rather than explanation. Fear doesn't respond well to logic in the dark. It responds to warmth. There's an old habit some households keep during the deepest nights. They tell stories. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly and low. Familiar tales repeated year after year. Stories of ancestors who survived worse winters, of storms endured, of springs that eventually came. These stories aren't entertainment. They are reassurance, woven carefully into the hours that feel longest. You listen as one such story drifts through the room, barely louder than the fire. You've heard it before. Everyone has. The details shift slightly each telling, but the shape remains the same. Hardship, patience, survival. The ending never changes. People make it through. That matters more than novelty. The darkness presses closer to the fire as embers sink. Someone stirs them gently, coaxing a faint glow back to life. Sparks jump briefly, then settle. Light expands just enough to push shadows back. You feel the subtle relief ripple through the room. Darkness feels manageable again. Night also brings cold into sharper focus. Without movement, bodies cool faster. You notice it creeping in. First as a dull ache in joints, then as stiffness. You adjust, drawing knees closer, shifting weight, pressing against another body for warmth. These movements happen quietly, almost unconsciously. There's a persistent belief whispered in some places that the dead walk more freely during winter nights, drawn by cold and darkness. Whether taken literally or not, it reflects something real. Winter nights feel thinner, as if the boundary between now and then weakens. People become more reflective, more aware of loss, more grateful for presence. You think briefly of those not here. Neighbors lost in past winters, family members remembered quietly. Winter holds memory tightly. Darkness gives it space to surface. You let the thoughts come, then gently set them aside. Dwelling too long invites heaviness that makes endurance harder. Time moves strangely now. Minutes stretch, hours blur. You don't know how long you've been awake when drowsiness returns. Heavy and insistent. Sleep in winter comes in layers. Light sleep, waking, adjustment, deeper sleep, waking again. This cycle repeats until morning. If morning comes, the fire dims again. Someone checks it, adding a small piece of wood, not enough to flare. just enough to last. Restraint governs every decision. Burn too much now, and tomorrow suffers. Burn too little, and tonight does. You trust the judgment that guides these choices. It has been shaped by many winters before this one. As the night reaches its deepest point, something shifts. The cold feels steadier, no longer intensifying. The wind quiets further. Snow settles. This is often the coldest hour. When the world holds its breath before light returns, you feel it in your body, a deep stillness that borders on calm. You breathe slowly, sinking with the room. Breath, fire, darkness, all moving together now. You are tired, but not afraid. Winter has not won tonight. It has tested you, pressed you, demanded attention. You have answered. When sleep finally deepens, it feels earned, not luxurious, not gentle, but solid enough to rest on. Darkness wraps around you, no longer threatening, just present. You drift, trusting that the long night, like all the others before it, will eventually give way to pale morning light. Morning does not arrive with confidence in winter. It seeps in slowly, diluted and pale, barely strong enough to push back the night. You sense it before you see it. A subtle shift in the air, a thinning of darkness rather than its disappearance. The fire is low now, embers breathing faintly beneath ash. Bodies around you stir, not from restfulness, but from necessity. Cold does not allow oversleeping. You open your eyes to a room that looks smaller than it did the night before. Shadows cling stubbornly to corners. Breath still fogs the air. Someone moves carefully, stretching stiff limbs, testing joints before trusting them. Morning in a medieval winter is less about waking and more about restarting a body that has cooled too far overnight. Illness is the quiet threat that hovers closest at this hour. Cold nights weaken resistance. Damp air settles deep in chests. A cough that lingered yesterday sounds harsher now, more insistent. You notice it immediately. Everyone does. No one comments aloud. But attention sharpens. Sickness spreads fastest when bodies are tired and cold. And winter creates both conditions easily. You sit up slowly, gauging how your body responds. Stiffness is expected. Pain is tolerated. What you watch for is something else. Weakness that feels wrong. Dizziness that lingers too long. A chill that doesn't retreat when you move closer to the fire. These signs matter. Early action can mean the difference between recovery and decline. The fire is coaxed back to life with careful hands. A breath, a shift of ash. A small piece of wood laid just right. Flames return reluctantly, then strengthen. Light grows warmer. Faces reappear more clearly. You feel the room lift slightly as warmth returns, as if everyone exhales together. Illness in winter carries fear not because it is new, but because it is unpredictable. A simple cold can fade or deepen. Fever can come and go. There is little certainty and less treatment. What exists is observation, rest, warmth, and hope that the body remembers how to heal itself. You watch as someone prepares a simple broth, thin but warm. Food is medicine now as much as fuel. Warm liquids soothe chests, ease breathing, offer comfort beyond their substance. Herbs saved carefully through summer are brought out when needed. Thyme, garlic, whatever remains. Their effectiveness varies, but ritual itself reassures. There is debate among those who look back on this time about how much medieval remedies truly helped. Some suggest warmth and rest did most of the work. Others point out that certain herbs had real, if limited, benefits. What remains clear is that care mattered. People did not abandon the sick to cold alone. They gathered them inward, closer to heat and bodies. You help rearrange bedding, moving someone weaker toward the center, away from drafts. This shift happens quietly, without discussion. It is understood. Stronger bodies take colder edges. It is not heroic. It is practical. Survival favors groups that protect their vulnerable. The smell of illness is subtle but distinct. Sour breath, damp cloth, a heaviness in the air that feels different from smoke alone. You notice it and push the thought away. Fear helps nothing. Action does. You bring water warm near the fire. You adjust blankets. You offer your presence without crowding. Winter illness also tests patience. Recovery is slow. Rest conflicts with the need to work. Someone ill cannot contribute fully, increasing strain on others. This tension simmers beneath calm surfaces. You feel it but do not voice it. Resentment wastes energy. Compassion preserves cooperation. Children are watched closely. Their fevers rise faster. Their strength fades quicker. Extra care is given without complaint. Adults skip meals quietly. They sit closer to drafts without protest. These sacrifices are not announced. They are simply made. There's a lingering belief that illness worsens if spoken of too openly, as if naming it invites it to stay. Whether superstition or emotional strategy, it leads to a careful language. A bit tired, not feeling strong. Rarely is sickness declared outright unless it becomes impossible to ignore. You remember past winters where illness swept through quickly, leaving spaces where bodies once lay. Those memories shape behavior now. You clean what you can. You air cloth when weather allows. You avoid unnecessary contact without isolating anyone completely. Balance again. Always balance. As the morning strengthens slightly, tasks resume. But gently. Heavy labor waits when someone is unwell. Firewood is brought inside first. Water warmed. The sick are settled where light reaches them. Sunlight, thin as it is, feels important. People believe it helps. And belief carries its own power. There is a moment, brief but telling, when someone laughs softly at something small. The sound is surprising. Fragile. It ripples through the room, easing tension. Laughter feels risky in winter, as if joy might tempt loss. But it also reminds everyone that life continues despite discomfort. You sip warm broth, feeling it loosen your chest. Steady your stomach. Outside, the snow still lies deep, untouched by thaw. Inside, warmth and care push back against the season's worst edges. Not enough to banish danger, but enough to make endurance possible. Illness teaches humility. Strong bodies weaken. Weak ones recover unexpectedly. No one controls the outcome entirely. You learn to respond rather than predict, to support rather than judge. Winter strips away illusions of mastery quickly. As the morning settles into a grey steadiness, you feel cautiously hopeful, not because danger has passed, but because attention remains sharp. Fires burn. Food is shared. The sick are watched. These small acts form a barrier as real as walls. You draw your cloak closer and sit near the hearth, ready to help when needed, conserving energy when not. Winter mornings are not about progress. They are about preservation. And for now, preservation is enough. Fear settles into winter quietly, rarely announced, more often felt in the pauses between sounds. It drifts through the house like cold air, finding places to rest when attention slips. You notice it most when the wind rises suddenly, or when someone coughs twice instead of once. It's there when the fire hesitates before catching, or when supplies are counted for the third time in a single morning. You've learned that fear does not always look dramatic. Most days, it looks like restlessness, like someone pacing a little too often, like silence stretching just a bit too long after a question is asked. Winter sharpens awareness, and awareness easily turns inward. People here carry explanations for the things they cannot control. Storms that arrive without warning, illness that spreads unevenly, death that seems to choose at random, when logic offers no comfort. Belief steps in to fill the gap. You hear it in murmured phrases, in habits followed more carefully during blizzards than at any other time of year. Someone hangs a small charm near the door, fashioned from wood and twine. It has been there before, taken down in warmer months. Returned now without comment, another person traces a simple mark in ash near the hearth, a habit learned from an elder long gone. These gestures are not loud declarations of faith. They are quiet attempts to feel less powerless. Winter brings out old beliefs that sleep through the rest of the year. Stories of spirits drawn to cold houses, of storms sent as punishment or warning, of unseen forces that slip through drafts the same way wind does. You don't fully believe these things. Not exactly. But in a world where so much is uncertain, you don't dismiss them either. Prayer becomes more frequent now, though not always formal. A whispered request before sleep, a wordless pause before stepping into the wind, a shared moment of stillness when the fire flares unexpectedly, as if responding. Even those who rarely speak of faith find themselves turning inward, looking for reassurance beyond effort and preparation. There's a practical side to this too. Rituals create structure. They mark beginnings and endings. They give people something to do when waiting becomes unbearable. In winter, waiting is constant. Waiting for storms to pass. Waiting for illness to break. Waiting for light. You watch as someone kneels briefly. Not in display, but habit. They touch the floor. Then the edge of the hearth. Then their forehead. It takes only a moment. No one stares. No one interrupts. Everyone understands the need to anchor oneself in something when nature feels overwhelming. Fear also surfaces in dreams. People wake suddenly. Breath quick. Heart racing. Nightmares come easily when cold presses against the body and the mind drifts through half sleep. Dreams of burial beneath snow, of wandering lost paths, of fires dying. When someone wakes this way, others shift closer without being asked. Warmth and presence calm faster than words. There's an old notion that winter strips away pretense, revealing who people truly are. In truth, it reveals who they need to be. Fearful people learn steadiness. Skeptical people find comfort in small rituals. Strong people accept vulnerability. The season reshapes behavior quietly, persistently. You feel fear yourself when the wind changes direction suddenly, rattling a wall harder than before. Your heart jumps before you can stop it. You steady your breathing, reminding yourself that the house has held through worse. Memory is a powerful counterweight to panic. You recall past storms endured, past nights survived. They don't guarantee safety, but they offer perspective. Superstition sometimes takes practical form. People avoid sweeping at night during storms. Believing it invites loss. They keep tools in certain places. They repeat phrases taught to them long ago. These habits may not influence the weather, but they influence people. They reduce anxiety. They prevent rash decisions. In that way, they serve a purpose. There is debate among those who study such things about how much medieval belief systems were driven by ignorance versus emotional necessity. Some argue fear-filled gaps where science had not yet reached. Others suggest belief offered resilience, a way to endure uncertainty without breaking. Standing here, feeling the cold press and the wind test every seam, the distinction feels less important than the outcome. People endure. You notice how fear ebbs when tasks are clear. When hands are busy, minds quiet. So work resumes whenever possible. Someone mends a tear. Someone sharpens a tool. Someone sorts stores. These actions are small, but they assert control in a world that often denies it. As evening approaches again, rituals return. The fire is checked. Doors are secured. Gaps reassessed. Words are spoken softly, deliberately. Fear does not disappear, but it becomes manageable, folded into routine rather than allowed to roam freely. You take a moment to sit quietly, listening. Wind, fire, breath, familiar sounds. You let them ground you, pushing fear to the edges of awareness where it belongs. Winter does not reward panic. It rewards steadiness. Outside, the storm continues its slow reshaping of the land. Inside, belief and habit weave together, forming an invisible shelter as important as walls and thatch. You do not need to believe everything you hear. You only need enough comfort to keep going. As night settles once more, fear loosens its grip slightly. Not gone, just quieter. You draw warmth closer, settle into position, and allow the rhythm of the house to carry you forward. Winter will test you again. You know that. But for now, you are ready to meet it. Armed with preparation, presence, and the quiet reassurance that comes from shared endurance. Winter teaches you quickly that survival is rarely an individual achievement. Even the strongest body weakens when cold and hunger stretch on long enough. What keeps people alive through blizzards like this is not strength alone, but connection. Community becomes the quiet framework holding everything together, visible only when pressure builds. You see it in the way doors open more often now. Not wide, not wastefully, but enough to check on others. A quick glance, a brief word exchanged in the wind, a nod that says, "I'm here." You learn who hasn't been seen today, who hasn't come to the fire, who hasn't made the short walk they usually manage without trouble. Absence speaks loudly in winter. Villages contract during storms. Movement shrinks to the essential. Paths between homes are trampled into narrow lines through snow, marking safe passage. People follow these lines carefully, stepping where others have stepped before. There is comfort in shared tracks, proof that someone passed through and returned. Food moves quietly between households, not in grand gestures, but in small transfers that barely draw attention. A loaf passed through a doorway, a jug of ale left near a threshold. No one announces generosity. No one records debts. Winter accounting is informal, based on memory and mutual dependence. You give when you can because you may need the same kindness later. Shelter, too, becomes shared. When a roof fails or a fire cannot be kept, people move in together without debate. Space tightens. Privacy dissolves. Complaints are rare. Everyone understands the stakes. More bodies mean more warmth, more watchful eyes, more resilience. Isolation is the true danger. You notice how roles blur now. The person who leads in summer may rely on others in winter. The young help the old. The injured are supported by those who can still move freely. Hierarchies soften under cold pressure. Survival rearranges priorities quickly. There's a quiet etiquette to winter cooperation. Help is offered without shaming. Refusal is accepted when pride still holds. But persistence remains. Someone will return later. Try again. Leave assistance in a way that allows dignity to survive alongside bodies. This balance matters. Pride keeps people moving. Care keeps them alive. Children learn these lessons early. They watch adults share food, share warmth, share work. They absorb the unspoken rule that winter is endured together, or not at all. These memories shape them long after the snow melts. Community becomes instinct rather than obligation. There's an old observation passed down in different words across many places. Storms reveal who belongs. It's not about birthplace or blood alone. It's about who shows up when conditions turn hostile. Winter is a test that cannot be cheated. You feel this bond most strongly at night, when fires burn low and fear edges closer. The simple presence of others steadies the mind. Breathing becomes synchronized. Silence feels shared rather than empty. Even disagreements soften in the face of cold. Conflict wastes energy no one can spare. Not all communities endure equally. Some fracture under pressure. Supplies run out unevenly. Old grudges resurface. When that happens, winter grows harsher still. People remember these failures long after spring. Stories circulate quietly. Warnings passed along without accusation. Cooperation is remembered as survival. Division as loss. You notice how information travels during storms. Who has wood left? Whose well is frozen solid? Where illness has appeared, news moves quickly because it must. Decisions depend on it. People adapt routes, adjust plans, change where they sleep based on shared knowledge. Winter rewards communication. There's debate among those who study these periods about whether medieval communities were truly cooperative or simply forced into proximity. Standing here, watching food pass hand to hand and doors open without question. The distinction feels academic. Motivation matters less than outcome. People survive together. You recall a story told once about a lone household that refused help during a long winter. Convinced self-reliance would see them through. When spring came, their house stood empty. The story is not told with cruelty, but sadness. It serves as reminder rather than judgment. As evening settles again, you gather closer to familiar faces. The fire feels warmer when shared. Laughter, rare but real, flickers briefly. Cutting through the weight of the season, these moments matter more than they seem. They refill something deeper than hunger. Outside, snow continues to fall, indifferent to human effort. Inside, effort continues anyway. People mend, share, watch, and wait. Community becomes shelter layered atop shelter. A human structure as important as walls and roofs. You rest now, surrounded by others, feeling the subtle reassurance of belonging. Winter has not been defeated, but it has been met with something stronger than individual will. And as long as that holds, you know you can endure what comes next. Travel becomes a gamble the moment snow settles deep enough to erase familiar ground. You know this instinctively. Even before anyone says it aloud, paths vanish first, softened into sameness beneath, drifting white. What was once obvious becomes uncertain. Distance stretches, direction blurs. Winter does not forbid movement, but it punishes it without warning. You step outside and immediately feel how sound behaves differently now. Snow absorbs it, dulling echoes, flattening space. Your own footsteps feel closer than they should, as if the world has shrunk around you. Landmarks disappear or transform. A fence becomes a low ridge. A hedgerow turns into an indistinct hump. You rely less on sight and more on memory. Counting steps, tracing invisible lines you've walked 100 times before. Even short journeys demand preparation. A cloak pulled tighter, a cord checked twice, a tool carried not because you expect to use it, but because not having it feels wrong. You move deliberately, testing each step. Snow hides uneven ground, frozen ruts, shallow ditches that can twist an ankle without warning. Injury is the real threat here, more than cold itself. There's a quiet understanding among people that winter travel is something to be avoided unless necessary. When someone does venture out, others notice. A figure moving through snowfall draws attention immediately. Eyes follow until it disappears. Everyone waits for the return. The relief when it comes back safely is subtle but real. You remember hearing of travelers who underestimated these conditions. They followed what looked like a familiar route, only to drift gradually off course as wind pushed snow across their path. Without landmarks, even small deviations grow quickly. A turn taken too early, a hedge mistaken for another. Before long, nothing matches memory, and panic begins. Once panic sets in, decisions worsen. People rush. They choose speed over caution. They miss cues that might have guided them back. Stories circulate quietly about those who lay down for just a moment to rest, convinced they would rise again. Winter does not allow such pauses. You tighten your grip on a staff as you walk, using it to probe ahead, to test depth, to steady yourself when ground gives unexpectedly. This simple tool extends your senses beyond your feet. It tells you where ice lies thin, where snow drifts deep. You trust it more than sight. Frozen rivers and streams are especially dangerous now. Their surfaces look solid, smooth, inviting even, but ice forms unevenly, thick in some places, treacherous in others. You avoid crossings whenever possible, choosing longer routes over risk. When crossing cannot be avoided, you spread weight carefully, moving slowly, listening for cracks beneath your feet. There's an old piece of advice shared among those who travel in winter. Never go alone if you can help it. A second body means another set of eyes, another mind to catch mistakes. another source of warmth if something goes wrong. Companionship turns danger into something survivable. Alone, even small errors become fatal. You feel the truth of this now, moving alongside someone else, matching pace, exchanging brief glances rather than words. Conversation wastes breath. Focus keeps you upright. When one stumbles, the other steadies them without comment. Cooperation is physical here, immediate. Snow begins to fall harder again, thickening the air. Visibility shrinks to a few body lengths. The world becomes a tunnel of white. Closing in from all sides, you slow further, anchoring each step. In moments like this, stopping feels tempting. Rest seems reasonable. You push the thought away. Stillness invites cold to settle too deeply. You navigate by subtle cues. The slope of ground beneath snow, the direction of wind against your face, the way snow gathers against obstacles. These signals guide you when sight fails. You don't name them consciously. You respond. Travel during blizzards also carries social weight. Those who leave may not return. Those who do return bring news that matters. Who is well? Who is struggling? Which paths are blocked? Information gathered at personal risk becomes communal knowledge. It shapes decisions, saves lives. You think briefly of messengers who once carried letters and news across winter landscapes like this. Their work demanded skill, endurance, and luck. Many did not make it. Their absence was noted quietly. Names spoken less often as years passed. Winter erases without ceremony. As you near shelter again, the sight of familiar walls brings immediate relief. Tension drains from shoulders. Breath deepens. The world expands slightly as safety reasserts itself. You step inside and close the door quickly, shutting out wind that feels sharper now than it did moments before. Snow melts from your cloak, darkening wool, sending up faint steam near the fire. You move closer, careful not to scorch damp fabric. Warmth returns unevenly, painfully. Fingers tingle as blood flows back. You welcome the sensation. It means you made it. You share what you learned quietly. The drift near the old oak is deeper than it looks. The stream by the bend is not safe. The path beyond the hedgerow has vanished. These details are absorbed immediately, stored for later. Knowledge becomes collective property in winter. Travel ends. But vigilance does not. You settle back among others, grateful for walls, fire, and familiar faces. Outside, the storm continues to redraw the land. Inside, you hold fast to what you know. Winter journeys remind you of something essential. Survival here depends not on bravery, but on restraint. Knowing when to move, knowing when to stop, knowing when to turn back. You rest now, carrying the weight of cold and distance in tired muscles, knowing that if you must go out again, you will do so with the same care, the same respect for a season that tolerates no carelessness. Winter shows its preferences without apology. It presses hardest on those whose bodies cannot compensate quickly enough, whose warmth leaks faster than it can be made. You see this most clearly in the young and the old. Children shiver sooner, elders tire faster. Neither group complains much. But winter notices them anyway. You become more watchful now, eyes drifting often towards smaller bodies and slower movements. Children sit closer to the fire than they did in autumn. Their cheeks redden quickly, then pale just as fast. They burn energy constantly, even when still. And winter demands more fuel than their small frames can easily provide. You offer them food first, warmth first. Without discussion, no one questions this order. Elders move more carefully now. Steps shorter, joints stiffened by cold that seeps deep and lingers. They know their limits well, often better than anyone else. Pride remains, but it's tempered by experience. They accept help more readily in winter, understanding that survival sometimes requires surrendering independence for a season. You notice how the household rearranges itself around these needs. Children are kept away from drafts. settled closer to walls warmed by animals, tucked deeper beneath blankets at night. Elders are given places where standing requires less effort, where warmth gathers naturally. These adjustments are subtle, almost invisible, but constant. Sleep becomes a concern here too. Children sleep deeper, harder to rouse when cold stiffens the room. You check on them more often, feeling for warmth beneath blankets, listening to breathing. A child who sleeps too still in winter draws attention quickly. The line between deep rest and danger can be thin. For elders, sleep fractures. They wake often. Joints aching. Breath shallow. Cold aggravates old injuries. Aches remembered from long ago labor. You watch for signs of confusion. For slowed response, cold steals clarity as easily as it steals heat. You speak gently. Repeat things when needed, not out of condescension, but caution. There's a quiet understanding that winter can claim the very young and the very old without warning. This knowledge doesn't make people cruel. It makes them attentive. Every cough is noticed. Every stumble remembered. Winter sharpens care into something almost instinctive. Food distribution reflects this vigilance. Extra portions slip toward children unnoticed. Elders receive warmer foods when possible. Broth rather than bread. Soft food rather than hard. Chewing costs energy too. And energy is precious. No one announces these choices. They happen quietly. Naturally. You remember hearing once that some families believed elders carried warmth poorly because their bodies had already given too much to the world. Whether believed literally or not, it shaped behavior. Elders were kept warm not just out of respect, but necessity. Their bodies did not recover from cold the way younger ones did. Children, on the other hand, are protected from exposure whenever possible. You keep them indoors during storms, inventing small tasks near the fire to keep them occupied. Winter boredom can be dangerous. Restlessness leads to risk. A child wandering too close to the door, too curious about snow, too eager to play where cold bites hardest. You watch for this and redirect gently. There's a small, easily overlooked practice that becomes more important now. Touch. A hand placed on a child's shoulder. A palm resting briefly against an elder's arm. Touch checks warmth quickly. It reassures. It communicates without words. In winter, touch is information. You notice how elders contribute differently now. They tell stories. They remember paths lost beneath snow. They recall winters worse than this one. Storms that lasted longer. Hunger that bit deeper. These memories are not complaints. They are guidance. They offer perspective that steadies fear, reminding everyone that endurance has precedent. Children listen more intently to these stories during winter. The dark encourages imagination, and fear makes reassurance valuable. Stories become a way to teach patience without preaching, survival wrapped in narrative. There's an unspoken rule about work assignments. Children and elders do not take on tasks that risk exposure when storms are active. Fetching water, clearing roofs, traveling between houses. These jobs fall to those best able to recover from cold. It's not fairness. It's strategy. Some debate exists among those who study this period about how often children were exposed to harsh labor despite these risks. Evidence suggests both care and hardship existed side by side. Standing here, watching how carefully children are guarded during blizzards, it's clear that winter alters priorities. Survival overrides productivity. You watch an elder guide a child's hands near the fire, teaching how close is safe, how to turn palms slowly, how to avoid sparks. These lessons are not written. They are demonstrated again and again until the body remembers them automatically. Winter education is practical, immediate. Illness weighs heavier here too. A child's fever rises faster. An elder's cough lingers longer. You respond quickly, moving them closer to warmth, adjusting bedding, offering warm drinks. Delay costs more here than anywhere else. There's a quiet grief that hovers in winter, tied to memory. Elders remember those who did not make it through past storms. Children sense this without fully understanding it. The household moves gently around these memories, neither denying nor dwelling on them. Respect for lost shapes care for the living. As evening returns again, you help settle everyone into their places. Children are tucked in early, wrapped tightly. Bodies checked twice before sleep. Elders are settled where rising will be easiest if needed, where warmth holds longest through the night. These placements are deliberate, thoughtful, born of experience. You sit back, scanning the room, noting breathing patterns, positions, warmth distribution. This vigilance does not feel heavy. It feels necessary. Winter demands attention, and attention becomes habit. Protecting the young and the old is not framed as sacrifice. It is framed as continuity. Children carry the future. Elders carry the past. Losing either weakens everyone. As the fire settles and darkness thickens again, you feel a quiet resolve. Winter may press hardest on those least able to resist it, but it does not go unanswered. Care rises to meet it, shaped by memory, instinct, and shared responsibility. You remain awake a little longer than usual, listening, watching, ready to adjust if needed. Eventually, sleep pulls you under, lighter this time, knowing the weakest are guarded. And in that knowledge, rest comes more easily. Work shifts inward as the cold deepens, retreating from fields and roads into the tight, smoky heart of the house. Movement outside now costs too much. Fingers numb too quickly. Breath shortens too fast. So labor adapts, turning smaller, quieter, but no less necessary. Survival continues indoors, measured in stitches, shavings, and careful hands. You sit close to the fire, not to bask, but to work by its light. Shadows flicker across walls as tools move steadily. Wool is carded and spun, fibers drawn out slowly, twisted into thread that will become socks. Mittens, repairs. Every strand matters. Thin thread snaps easily. Thick thread wastes material. Your hands know the balance even when your mind drifts. Mending becomes constant. Elbows thin from use. Knees wear through. Cloaks fray at the edges where wind tugs hardest. You stitch patches over patches. Each one a record of past winters endured. The fabric grows heavier, less graceful, but stronger. Beauty loses its authority here. Utility rules. You notice how quiet the room grows when work begins. Not silence, but a focused hush. Needles pass through cloth with soft, repetitive sounds. Wood shavings fall in gentle curls as someone shapes a handle or smooths a splintered edge. These sounds soothe in a way conversation cannot. They signal progress, control, purpose. Indoor work keeps bodies warm without exhausting them. Fingers move, arms flex. Blood circulates just enough to hold cold at bay. This balance matters. Too much effort invites sweat. Too little allows stiffness. Craftwork finds the middle ground, warming without draining. Children are drawn into this rhythm as well. They're given small tasks near the fire. Sorting fibers, winding thread, holding tools. It keeps them occupied, close to warmth, engaged without risk. Winter teaches through doing, not explanation. Skills are absorbed quietly, hands learning alongside eyes. Elders contribute here more than anywhere else. Their hands move slower but surer, guided by long memory. They know how materials behave in cold, which wood splits cleanly, which knots hold under strain, which repairs will last the season, and which must be redone come spring. Their presence anchors the work, lending confidence. You feel time pass differently during these hours. Without daylight to mark progress, work becomes the clock. Tasks begin, tasks finish. Hands tire, fires are tended. This rhythm replaces the sun, keeping days from dissolving entirely. There's an understated satisfaction in producing something tangible during winter. Each finished item feels like resistance made visible. A repaired shoe means another journey possible. A woven sock means warmer feet. These objects carry hope stitched into them. Small but vital. You recall hearing that some households reserved certain crafts specifically for winter, not because there was more time, but because necessity sharpened focus. Tools were kept close. Materials rationed carefully. Waste was unforgivable. Winter teaches precision quickly. There's debate among those who look back on this period about how much indoor labor truly offset winter hardship. Some argue it was symbolic, offering comfort more than real advantage. Others point out that these small tasks added up, preserving clothing, tools, and morale. Sitting here, feeling warmth spread through working hands, the answer feels clear enough. As the fire crackles, someone sharpens a blade slowly. Methodically, metal sings faintly against stone. The sound draws attention briefly, then fades into the background. Sharp tools are safer tools. Dull blades slip. Winter injuries heal poorly. Preparation continues quietly. You glance at the door occasionally, listening for wind shifts. But mostly your focus stays inward now. Winter narrows the world, and you accept that narrowing. It makes attention easier. It simplifies priorities. Food simmers nearby. A thin stew warmed again, stretched as far as possible. Someone stirs it absent-mindedly while working, careful not to scorch the bottom. Warm food and warm hands reinforce each other, keeping bodies cooperative. There's a subtle shift in mood during these indoor hours. Tension eases slightly. Fear retreats to the edges. Work gives minds somewhere to rest. People speak softly again, sharing small observations. Quiet humor. These moments do not erase hardship, but they soften it. As evening approaches, tasks wind down naturally, hands slow. Tools are set aside carefully, returned to their places. Order matters now. Searching for misplaced items wastes energy and time. Winter rewards organization. You stretch fingers slowly, feeling stiffness return as work stops. You welcome the ache. It's the ache of usefulness, of having contributed something tangible to survival. That feeling carries warmth of its own. Darkness gathers again, but it feels less oppressive tonight. The room holds evidence of effort. Repaired cloth, sharpened tools, children calmer from focused tasks, elders content from sharing knowledge. These small victories matter. You settle back near the fire, wrapping your cloak tighter, eyes drifting toward the items you worked on. They will serve tomorrow, and the day after. Winter remains unforgiving, but it has been answered with patience and skill. As you rest, listening to the soft settling sounds of the house, you feel a quiet pride. Not loud, not boastful, just steady. Work done, warmth earned. And in winter like this, that steadiness is its own form of shelter. Hunger returns even after you think you've accounted for it. It slips back quietly, testing resolve the way cold tests walls. Snow lies thick outside now, sealing fields and paths beneath a smooth, indifferent cover. What once fed you is unreachable, locked away until thaw. Everything you eat must come from what was saved, preserved, or traded for long before the first flakes fell. You feel hunger differently tonight. Not sharp, not urgent, but persistent, like a dull pressure that refuses to be ignored. It sits behind your thoughts, influencing every decision. How much to eat now? How much to save? How long the storm might last? Winter trains the mind to measure time in meals. Rationing becomes second nature. Portions shrink almost without notice. Bread is cut thinner. Meat is sliced narrower still. You chew more slowly, stretching sensation to match scarcity. This isn't deception, it's adaptation. The body learns to accept less without panic, provided it receives something consistently. You watch as food is divided with care, each piece considered before it's placed in a bowl or handed across the firelight. There's no argument, no bargaining. Everyone understands the stakes. Eat too much today, and tomorrow becomes harder. Eat too little, and weakness invites illness. Balance again. Always balance. Salted foods dominate now. Meat preserved months ago. Stiff and dark. Softened only slightly by warmth and time. It requires effort to chew. Jaw muscles working steadily. The salt dries your mouth. But you welcome it. Salt preserves life here, keeping food edible long past its natural span. You drink ale afterward, easing the bite, replenishing warmth. Grain stores are guarded carefully. Flour is measured by handfuls rather than scoops. Porridge becomes thinner, stretched with water, stirred longer to create the illusion of fullness. Children complain less than you expect. Hunger dulls curiosity as much as it sharpens need. They adapt quickly, learning winter rules without explanation. There's a quiet calculation happening beneath every meal. How many days since the last resupply? How many mouths need feeding? How many storms still lie ahead? These numbers aren't written down. They live in memory, adjusted daily based on conditions. You trust the person who keeps these counts. Their judgment has been shaped by many winters. Snow outside deepens the sense of isolation. Travel is difficult. Trade slows or stops entirely. You rely on what you have and on the decisions made when skies were clear. This dependence sharpens gratitude and regret in equal measure. Every well-filled storehouse feels like foresight rewarded. Every shortfall feels like a mistake magnified. You remember stories of winters when snow fell early, before harvest was complete. Those were the hardest years. Hunger arrived sooner, pressed harder. People ate seed meant for spring, knowing it would cost them later. These stories are told quietly, as warnings rather than complaints. They remind everyone why preparation matters. There's a lesser-known practice some households keep during long storms. They rotate hunger deliberately, eating slightly less for a day or two, then restoring portions briefly. The body responds better to this rhythm, maintaining strength more effectively than constant deprivation, whether learned through experience or instinct. It works often enough to be remembered. You notice how hunger affects mood. Patience thins. Irritation surfaces more quickly. Words sharpen unintentionally. You catch yourself before speaking too fast, reminding yourself that hunger talks louder than intent. Others do the same. Winter teaches restraint not just in action, but in speech. Children ask fewer questions now. Their play slows. They curl closer to warmth, conserving energy instinctively. You watch them closely, offering food at regular intervals even when supplies strain. A hungry child weakens faster than an adult. Everyone knows this, even if no one says it aloud. Elders eat more slowly, savoring warmth as much as taste. Their bodies demand consistency over quantity. Warm food matters more than filling food. You ensure their bowls are warmed before serving. A small detail that makes a real difference in comfort and digestion. There's an odd clarity that hunger brings. It strips away excess thought, narrowing focus to essentials. Fire, food, warmth, people. The future shrinks to manageable size. This clarity can be calming, even as it presses hard. You live closer to the present than you ever do in summer. Debate exists among those who later examine this period about how often medieval households truly faced starvation versus discomfort. Evidence suggests both existed side by side. Standing here, feeling the steady ache beneath your ribs. The distinction feels academic. Hunger is hunger when it influences every decision, whether it kills outright or weakens gradually. As night approaches again, the final meal of the day is eaten slowly. You savor warmth rather than fullness, letting the fire's glow and shared presence fill some of the space food cannot. Hunger recedes slightly, enough to sleep, enough to dream. You tuck away remaining supplies carefully, sealing containers, checking for rodents. protecting what little remains. These acts feel almost sacred now. They safeguard tomorrow. Outside, snow continues to bury the world beneath a white silence. Inside, you endure, meal by measured meal, trusting discipline and memory to carry you through until thaw. Hunger does not disappear, but it becomes manageable, folded into routine like cold and darkness. You accept it as part of the season, another force to negotiate rather than defeat. As you settle down again, stomach quiet but not full, you breathe deeply, steadying yourself. You have enough for tonight, enough for morning, and for now, that is enough. Cold works on the mind as steadily as it works on the body. At first, it sharpens attention. Later, it dulls it. You feel this shift quietly, in the way thoughts take longer to form, in how memories blur at the edges, in how decisions feel heavier than they should. Winter does not just test muscles and lungs. It tests patience, focus, and hope. You notice it most during still moments, when there is nothing immediate to do. Hands idle, fire steady, outside silent beneath snow. In these pauses, the mind drifts inward, circling familiar worries. How long will this last? Will supplies hold? Who might fall ill next? The questions repeat, rarely answered, wearing grooves into thought. People here understand this danger intuitively. They rarely speak of it directly, but their behavior responds to it. Tasks are invented when none demand attention. Tools are cleaned again. Stores are counted twice. Stories are told even when everyone knows them already. Activity keeps the mind from sinking too deeply into itself. You catch yourself staring at the fire longer than usual, watching flames twist and collapse. Minutes pass unnoticed. When you realize it, you shake your head slightly, grounding yourself. Too much stillness invites a kind of heaviness that makes everything harder. You stand, stretch, move closer to others. Proximity anchors you. Winter thoughts tend to narrow, focusing obsessively on what might go wrong. You counter this by thinking in smaller increments. Not the rest of the season. Just today. Just tonight. Just keeping the fire alive until morning. Breaking time into pieces makes it manageable. This mental discipline is learned through necessity. Children sense these shifts even if they cannot name them. They become quieter, less playful, more observant. Their questions change. Fewer why questions, more when questions. When will it be light? When can we go outside? When will it be warm again? You answer gently, honestly but briefly. Too much detail feeds worry. Elders recognize winter's mental weight quickly. They've seen it before. They speak more often now, offering small reassurances, grounding observations. The snow is deep, but we've seen deeper. The fire is low, but it always looks that way at night. Their words are not promises. They are perspective. You notice how laughter functions differently now. It is quieter, rarer, but more powerful when it appears. A small joke about the smoke, a shared smile over a clumsy mistake. These moments lift the room noticeably, easing tension that has no single source. Humor becomes a form of insulation, thin but effective. Sleep patterns shift as well. Some nights you sleep heavily, exhaustion pulling you down like weight. Other nights, you wake repeatedly, thoughts racing despite cold. You listen to the house, counting breaths, waiting for calm to return. You learn not to fight wakefulness aggressively. Struggle feeds anxiety. Instead, you rest where you can, trusting rest to accumulate gradually. There's a persistent belief that winter darkness invites despair, that long nights weaken the spirit. Whether believed literally or not, behavior adapts to counter it. People gather closer. They keep fires visible. They avoid sitting alone in corners for too long. Light, warmth, and presence push back against isolation. Some scholars looking back suggest that winter melancholy was widespread. an early form of what might now be called seasonal sadness. Others caution against projecting modern categories onto the past. Standing here, feeling the subtle drag on thought and emotion. The labels feel unnecessary. What matters is recognition. People felt this weight, and they responded to it. You find yourself drawn to routine more than ever. Wake, tend fire, eat, work, rest, repeat. The predictability soothes the mind, offering structure when the world outside feels hostile. Deviations cause discomfort. You prefer things where you expect them to be. Order becomes comfort. Even faith shifts tone during winter. Prayers focus less on gratitude and more on endurance. Requests become simpler. Keep us warm. Keep us fed. Keep us together. These appeals are not dramatic. They are steady. Repeated quietly until they blend into thought itself. You catch a moment of doubt when the storm outside intensifies again. Wind rattling the walls harder than before. Your heart quickens. Thoughts jump ahead. What if this gets worse? What if the roof fails? You stop yourself gently, redirecting focus to what can be done now. Check the fire. Check the walls. Sit closer to warmth. Action quiets fear better than speculation. Community plays a critical role here too. Isolation magnifies winter's mental strain. Shared presence dilutes it. Even silence feels different when shared. You breathe easier knowing others are awake nearby, listening to the same sounds, enduring the same cold. There's a quiet resilience that develops over time. Not optimism exactly, but acceptance paired with effort. You stop expecting winter to be kind. You stop resenting it for what it is. You meet it where it stands, adjusting expectations rather than fighting reality. This shift brings a strange calm. As night deepens again, you settle into your place with less resistance than before. Thoughts still come, but they pass more easily. You've learned which ones matter and which can be set aside until daylight. Firelight flickers. Breath steadies. The house holds. Cold continues its work outside. Relentless and indifferent. Inside, minds adjust. Bending rather than breaking. Winter presses hard, but not infinitely. You remind yourself of this, letting the knowledge settle. Sleep comes unevenly, but it comes, and when it does, it carries you forward. One more night, closer to Thor. One more night endured. You used to imagine that wealth created distance from winter. Thicker walls, better food, softer beds, and it's true. To a point, but as the cold stretches on, you begin to understand something quieter and more unsettling. Winter does not respect rank as much as people hope it will. You picture the great houses you've heard about. Stone-built, tall and impressive. Rising above villages like promises of safety. Inside, tapestries hang heavy on walls. Floors are covered with rushes refreshed more often. Fires burn in multiple hearths. On the surface, it sounds luxurious. Yet stone remembers cold far longer than wood ever does. It drinks warmth greedily and gives nothing back. In rooms like those, heat pools near ceilings, far above where bodies rest. You've heard complaints passed along from servants who have worked there. How drafts snake along corridors. How doors echo shut behind you, trapping pockets of cold that never quite lift. How fires roar yet fail to warm the edges of vast chambers. Grandeur creates distance, and distance weakens heat. Those who sleep alone in such places often feel colder than those who share crowded rooms like yours. Heavy curtains offer privacy, but they also trap cold air inside beds, creating still pockets where warmth dissipates quickly. Feather mattresses feel inviting at first, then grow cold beneath you, without shared body heat. The night stretches longer. Even nobles must ration fuel in prolonged storms. Wood does not grow closer just because walls are decorated. When roads vanish and carts stop moving, supply chains collapse for everyone. The difference is one of delay, not immunity. Eventually, the same calculations appear. How much to burn tonight? How much to save for tomorrow? There's an old irony that those accustomed to comfort sometimes struggle more when it disappears. Bodies unused to constant cold adapt more slowly. Expectations become liabilities. You've heard it said quietly that peasants endure winter better not because they suffer less, but because they expect less. They adapt faster because they have no choice. Servants in large households know this well. They sleep in tighter quarters, closer together, often warmer than the lords they serve. Their rooms are smaller, easier to heat, filled with bodies and routine. Status does not determine warmth. Design does. You consider how castles, for all their strength, often feel colder than cottages. Stone walls thick enough to stop arrows also stop sunlight. Narrow windows limit heat gain, even on clear days. Wind whips through high towers, finding cracks that are impossible to seal completely. Fireplaces draw air upward, carrying warmth away faster than it arrives. People have long argued over whether castles were truly comfortable in winter or simply endured. Some accounts suggest nobles spent winters migrating between residences, seeking milder conditions when possible. Others imply they stayed put and suffered quietly, wrapped in layers, burning enormous amounts of fuel to chase warmth that never quite settled. Here, in your low house, warmth behaves differently. It stays close. It lingers. Smoke hangs. Bodies gather. Animals breathe nearby. Nothing is elegant, but little is wasted. Every bit of heat matters, and most of it remains where it can be felt. You feel a strange satisfaction in this realization. Not pride exactly, but clarity. Winter strips away illusion. Comfort is not purchased easily. It is built through adaptation, through design that accepts reality rather than fighting it. You imagine a noble lying alone in a vast bed. Curtains drawn, fire crackling at a distance, still feeling cold seep upward from stone. Meanwhile, you lie surrounded by others, bodies close, warmth shared, the fire small but effective. Luxury loses its meaning in this comparison. There's also the matter of isolation. Wealth can separate people physically. Emotionally, servants move quietly. Conversations are formal. Loneliness creeps in more easily when rooms are large and silent. Winter magnifies that emptiness. In smaller homes, presence fills space naturally. Silence feels shared rather than hollow. You remember hearing that some wealthy families ordered bed warmers filled with hot coals, sliding them beneath sheets before sleep. It offered brief comfort, but faded quickly. Coal cooled. Stone reclaimed warmth. The cycle repeated nightly. Labor-intensive and temporary. Another example of fighting winter rather than living with it. In your space, warmth is continuous, modest, persistent. It rises and falls, but never disappears entirely. Shared heat creates resilience that no single source can match. Winter teaches that redundancy matters. Many small contributors outperform one large one. As evening settles again, you glance around your crowded room with new appreciation. The closeness that once felt cramped now feels intentional, protective, designed by necessity rather than luxury. You understand now why this arrangement has survived so long. Outside, the storm shows no regard for status. Snow piles against manor walls and cottages alike. Wind tests every roof the same way. Inside, people respond according to what they have learned, not what they own. You settle back into place, adjusting your cloak, feeling warmth circulate slowly. Winter does not care who you are. It cares how you respond. And here, surrounded by shared breath and steady habit, you feel better prepared than most. As the fire dims and the night deepens, you let this realization settle. Survival belongs to those who adapt, not those who expect protection. And in that understanding, the cold feels just a little less personal, a little more manageable. As you rest through another long night, by now, the idea of comfort feels distant, almost theoretical. Winter has stripped it down to something simpler. something closer to truth. You no longer judge success by how warm you feel, but by whether you can keep moving, thinking, breathing steadily through the night. Endurance replaces ease as the quiet measure of a life lived well in this season. You feel this shift in your body first. The cold no longer shocks you the way it did when the storms began. It still hurts, still presses, but it feels familiar now, predictable in its cruelty. Your muscles respond more quickly. Your hands know how close they can come to the fire without risk. Your breathing adjusts automatically when the air sharpens. Adaptation settles in quietly, without ceremony. People around you change too. Complaints fade, not because conditions improve, but because complaining wastes energy. Conversations become more purposeful, movements more efficient. Winter pares behavior down to essentials, and in doing so, reveals a kind of discipline that summer never demands. You notice how little people speak of comfort anymore. No one asks if the room is warm enough. They ask if the fire will last, if the roof held through the night, if everyone woke up. These questions matter. Comfort does not. There's a particular strength that grows in this environment, one that has nothing to do with bravado. It's the strength to accept discomfort without surrendering to it, to recognize pain without letting it dominate thought, to work, rest, eat, and sleep within limits that would feel intolerable in gentler seasons. You feel it when you rise in the morning, stiff but functional, when you pull on cold clothing without hesitation, when you eat less than you want and stop before you feel full. These choices accumulate, shaping resilience, one small decision at a time. Some would call this suffering, others would call it necessity. Standing here, living it. The label matters less than the outcome. You endure. That is enough. There's a persistent idea that people in the past were simply tougher, made of harder material. The truth feels more subtle. They were not immune to cold or hunger. They felt it deeply. What differed was expectation. You no longer expect winter to accommodate you. You accommodate winter. That shift eases tension. Fighting the season exhausts you. Accepting it frees energy for what matters. You stop wishing the cold away and focus instead on managing it. This mindset does not make winter kind, but it makes survival possible. You watch others embody this acceptance. An elder adjusts their position without complaint. A child curls tighter and sleeps on. Someone repairs a tear in silence. Hands steady despite numb fingers. These acts are not heroic, but they are profound. They represent a collective agreement to persist. There's an old observation that endurance grows strongest when it's shared. Alone, discomfort feels overwhelming. Together, it becomes manageable. You feel this every night as bodies settle closer. Breath sinks, and the room finds its fragile equilibrium. Shared endurance transforms hardship into something almost bearable. You also notice how endurance sharpens gratitude, not the grand kind, but the small, precise kind. A fire that catches on the first try, a meal that is warm, a roof that holds through another storm. These moments matter more now because they are not guaranteed. Comfort dulls appreciation. Endurance refines it. There are moments, usually late at night, when you reflect on how much you've learned without realizing it. How to lay a cloth for maximum warmth. How to sleep in intervals. How to recognize early signs of danger in yourself and others. None of this came from instruction alone. It came from repetition. From nights like this one. Endured rather than escaped. You think about how future generations might misunderstand this, how they might imagine constant misery or constant stoicism. The reality sits between, there is discomfort. Yes, there is fear, but there is also routine, humor, care, and a deep familiarity with hardship that takes away some of its power. Winter, in this sense, becomes a teacher. Not a gentle one, but a thorough one. It removes illusions quickly. It reveals what matters and discards what does not. Comfort is optional. Endurance is not. As the fire settles again, You adjust automatically, pulling warmth closer, tucking cold edges away. You no longer resent these movements. They feel natural, even reassuring. Your body knows what to do. Your mind follows. Outside, the storm eases slightly, though cold remains. Inside, you feel steadier than you did weeks ago, not because conditions improved, but because you did. Adaptation has taken root. You understand now that survival through deadly blizzards in medieval England did not depend on exceptional strength or special tools. It depended on habits, on cooperation, on the willingness to live within limits rather than fight them, on endurance practiced daily, quietly, without applause. As you settle into rest once more, wrapped in layers and shared warmth, you feel a calm that would have surprised you earlier in the season. The cold is still there. The hunger will return. The night remains long. But you are still here. And in winter like this, that is the truest measure of success. By now, the idea of spring has become less of a season and more of a story you tell yourself to keep moving. It exists somewhere ahead, faint and imagined, not yet earned. You speak of it rarely, and when you do, it's with caution, as if naming it too boldly might tempt disappointment. Winter has taught you not to assume kindness from the future. You feel this restraint in the way people talk. No one says when the snow will melt. They say if. If the thaw comes early, if the storms ease, if stores last. Hope is held carefully now. Not crushed, but not flaunted either. Too much expectation sharpens loss if it goes unmet. Still, signs are watched closely. Every change in the wind, every shift in light, every subtle difference in how cold settles at night. You notice when mornings grow a fraction brighter, when darkness retreats just a little sooner than before. These changes are small enough to doubt, but persistent enough to stir something cautious in you. The body feels them first. Not warmth exactly, but relief. Fingers loosen a bit faster near the fire. Breath feels less sharp on the coldest mornings. Snow still lies deep, but its surface changes texture, crusting differently underfoot. You test it with a staff. Curious despite yourself. People begin to check stores more frequently now, not from panic, but calculation. How much remains if winter stretches longer? How much can be spared if thaw arrives soon? Planning shifts subtly from survival to transition. The focus widens just enough to include what comes next. There's an old saying you've heard whispered during winters like this. Spring owes you nothing. It arrives when it arrives. This belief tempers optimism with realism. You do not stop preparing for cold just because light lingers longer. Many have made that mistake and paid for it when winter returned with sudden force. You remember stories of false springs, brief thaws that softened snow only to freeze it again harder than before. People ventured out too soon, relaxed too quickly, burned fuel wastefully. When cold returned, it found them unready. These stories linger as warnings, shaping caution more effectively than any rule. Still, even guarded hope has power. You feel it when someone mentions seed stored safely away, when tools meant for soil are checked quietly, sharpened in advance. These acts are not declarations of confidence. They are preparation without assumption, the kind winter respects. Children feel the change before they understand it. They grow restless, peering toward the door more often, asking questions about when they can run outside again. You temper their excitement gently, reminding them that snow still hides dangers, that streams remain treacherous, that patience matters. Their disappointment is brief, replaced by curiosity about what will come. Elders watch the sky more often now. They remember other winters, other thaws. They caution against reading too much into early signs. But you see a different look in their eyes when light stretches a little longer. Memory and hope sit side by side there, neither fully trusted, neither dismissed. The land outside remains locked, silent beneath snow. Fields sleep deeply, waiting. You understand now how completely winter disconnects you from the earth. Food comes from stores, not soil. Work comes from maintenance, not growth. Spring promises reconnection, but only when it truly arrives. There's a subtle shift in mood as days lengthen. Fear loosens slightly. Conversations drift beyond immediate needs. Someone mentions repairing a fence come thaw. Another speaks of planting. Not this week or next, but someday. These thoughts feel risky, but they also feel human. Winter does not erase imagination entirely. It merely narrows it. You feel the tension between caution and longing inside yourself. Part of you wants to believe the worst is nearly over. Another part reminds you how long winter can linger, how suddenly it can return to full strength. You hold both thoughts together, neither winning completely. At night, dreams begin to change. Snow still appears, but so does water running free. Green edges creep into sleep, faint and unreal. You wake unsure whether these images comfort or unsettle you. Hope carries risk now. It opens the door to disappointment. Yet even disappointment feels easier to face after everything you've endured. Winter has tested you repeatedly, and you have answered. Not perfectly, but well enough. That knowledge steadies you. Whatever comes next, you will adapt again. The fire burns a little less aggressively now. Not because cold has gone, but because you sense the balance shifting. You still conserve wood, still guard warmth, but you allow yourself to imagine a future where fire is comfort rather than necessity. The thought feels strange, almost indulgent. Snow outside begins to settle differently, slumping in places where it once stood rigid. You notice dark patches near walls where warmth leaks steadily, slowly winning. These are not victories. They are hints, subtle, uncertain, but present. You remain cautious. Winter has earned your respect. You do not dismantle defenses early. You do not waste stores. You do not celebrate yet. Instead, you wait with a different posture than before, less braced, more observant. As night falls again, you settle into shared warmth, listening to the familiar sounds of breath and fire. The storm has not returned tonight. Silence feels different now, less oppressive, more open. Spring remains distant, but no longer unimaginable. You close your eyes, holding that thought gently, neither clinging nor dismissing it. Whatever comes, you will meet it the way you met winter, with preparation, with care, with endurance. And that, you know now, is enough to carry you through whatever lies ahead. The final stretch of winter feels like a slow exhale. Nights are still long, wind sharp, and snow thick. But somehow, endurance has shaped itself into a rhythm that is almost manageable. You wake, stretch, and move. Muscles accustomed now to cold. Fingers flex with minimal effort. Breathing is steady. The body remembers. Habits formed over weeks of storms guide you automatically, silently, without conscious thought. Morning light creeps in earlier now, pale and cautious, but enough to touch the edges of walls, to outline furniture, to make shadows stretch long and familiar. It does not promise warmth. Not yet, but it signals change. Even that small signal lifts spirits. People sense it without discussing it. Movement quickens slightly. Hands work more confidently. Steps are lighter. Hope, long restrained, slips into daily routines as quietly as snow melts from the eaves. Tasks grow less frantic. Food is still rationed, yet the margin feels slightly larger. Bread is sliced just a fraction thicker. Broth simmers for a few minutes longer to warm the body more thoroughly. Water still freezes outside, but sunlight now reaches it enough during the day to allow small reliefs, ice cracked carefully and melted over fires, giving brief moments of abundance. You watch these adjustments carefully, knowing that even minor miscalculations still carry consequences. Outside, snow begins to shift under gravity and faint warmth. Drifts soften, though they remain deceptive, hiding uneven ground beneath. Travel remains cautious. Footing is still treacherous, yet the air feels slightly less oppressive, less alien. You notice subtle sounds again, the faint crunch of ice settling, the distant cry of a bird, the soft sigh of wind easing over rooftops. They are minor, yet remarkable after months of muffled isolation. Community interactions become subtly richer. Children peek outside, cautiously, pressing small hands against frosted windows, eyes bright with curiosity that winter had dulled before. Elders watch from the firelight, approving gestures. Stories retold with a hint of patience and humor. Conversations drift farther from survival logistics, touching on memories of summer, plans for spring, and, sometimes, laughter that seems louder than the faintest echo of hope. You feel that shift in the body too. Muscles ache less from constant tensing. Fingers flex fully, warmed by both fire and proximity to others. Feet are steadier, joints respond with less stiffness. Every small movement feels more deliberate, less about survival and more about living within survival. That nuance is profound, though subtle. It is the difference between enduring and thriving, even if only slightly. Winter's final weeks also amplify awareness. You see the small vulnerabilities that remain, cracks in walls, thin patches of thatch, spots in straw bedding that have compressed too far. Each imperfection carries more weight now because the season is nearing its end, and the margin for error shrinks. You check the fire, adjust straw, ensure the youngest and oldest bodies are properly insulated. These acts are small, repetitive, and necessary. Attention never fully relaxes, even as the landscape outside begins to soften. Food routines, too, carry layers of newfound relief. Stored bread and meat last longer than expected, giving breathing room. You slice and distribute, mindful of every portion, yet more generous than before. Broth tastes richer as it warms slowly on the fire. Ale, watered carefully, offers both calories and warmth. The simple acts of eating and drinking, once mechanical, now carry subtle pleasure taste that reminds you of seasons past. Warmth that is both literal and emotional. Sleep adjusts, too. Nights are still long, but cycles are calmer. Rest comes more fully, though not indulgently. Breathing sinks more smoothly with others around you. Minor disturbances, a child shifting, an elder stirring. Wind rattling a wall no longer startle. The body, mind, and community have adapted so thoroughly that survival becomes almost invisible in action. Routine carries you forward seamlessly. Reflection emerges quietly in these weeks. You consider the endurance, the preparation, the vigilance that winter has demanded. You think about shared warmth, rationed food, vigilant firekeeping, careful attention to drafts and animals, and the interplay of fear, hope, and patience. All these elements intertwined to preserve life, not through heroics, but through persistent, careful choices repeated over and over. The pattern is simple in hindsight, yet impossible without attention and shared effort. You feel gratitude as a practical thing, not sentimental. Grateful for food that sustains, for bodies that share warmth, for knowledge that guides decisions, for community that endures. Each is as vital as firewood stacked carefully near the hearth. Each is proof that survival is neither solitary nor passive. It is earned daily, consciously, deliberately, together. Outside, wind continues to whisper through eaves and chimneys. Snow still lies thick, but the edge of change hums faintly in every sound, every shadow, every cautious movement. You sense that the long season of trial is not yet over, but the measures taken have carried you this far. You carry lessons learned, precision, patience, observation, cooperation as quietly and persistently as warmth that flows between bodies in a crowded room. As night finally gathers around the house once more, you settle in for the last hours before dawn. Firelight flickers across faces and walls. Breaths rise in clouds and settle slowly. You draw blankets tight. Body snug yet aware of subtle drafts. The room hums with quiet rhythm movement. Work, care, and shared presence. Sleep begins to claim you slowly. Not sudden or complete, but steady. You reflect briefly on what has been endured. Fires tended, meals measured, clothing layered, repaired, adjusted, steps taken cautiously, children comforted, elders protected, animals fed, shared vigilance maintained. These acts, repeated through weeks of storm and cold, have preserved life, not heroically, not dramatically, but relentlessly, patiently, carefully. And now, in this quiet moment, you allow yourself to feel the subtle reward of endurance, the almost imperceptible warmth that comes from knowing survival has been managed once more. Winter has not gone, but you have learned its rules, lived by them, and emerged intact. Still present, still breathing, still observing, still ready. The long night stretches, but you rest within it, fully aware that persistence has carried you through. You trust your habits, your body, your community, your preparedness. They will carry you through the hours remaining, until the snow begins to relent, until light expands, until warmth begins to claim the land again. And in that trust, you find calm, steady, quiet, earned calm. The long night finally softens. Though winter remains present, you breathe slowly, feeling warmth that is earned rather than given, steady rather than luxurious. The fire hums quietly, embers settling, casting flickering orange shadows across familiar walls. Every sound, every movement, carries a calm rhythm now. The cold is still outside, relentless in its persistence. But inside, you feel the subtle, unspoken security that comes from preparation, adaptation, and shared presence. Bodies around you rise and fall gently with breath. Children curl safely beneath layers of wool. Elders rest with minimal movement, their wisdom guiding small decisions that keep everyone safe. Animals shift quietly, adding warmth to the room in ways that are subtle but vital. This interconnectedness is invisible in everyday life. Yet here, during the season's long hours, it forms a fragile, dependable web. You feel part of it now, a participant and observer at once, aware that every choice where to place a blanket, when to stoke the fire, how much bread to ration matters for survival. Outside, the wind continues, softer now, as if respecting the sanctuary indoors. You sense the night retreating gradually, the world beyond waiting patiently. Inside, time slows, each breath stretching just enough to feel the pulse of life itself. The ache of hunger dulls, the sting of cold retreats into memory, and with each heartbeat, each small motion, you realize that endurance is its own reward. Not glory, not luxury, not even comfort, but presence, steady and unbroken, in the face of forces beyond control. As sleep finally claims you, it comes like a quiet river, carrying away tension, fear, and fatigue. You drift deeper, guided by warmth, habit, and care. The night stretches out behind and ahead, but it no longer feels threatening. It feels steady, it feels shared, and in that stillness, there is reassurance whatever storms may come. Whatever blizzards may press against walls and bodies, survival is possible. You have endured. You are here. You are warm enough, strong enough, ready for whatever follows. The world continues outside, relentless. But inside, you rest. Peace settles. Calm persists. Life continues. Sweet dreams.